strategy has been to get to every part of the state, and we're feeling.
Democrat Angela also Brooks, the Prince George's County executive.
What's going on, guys? What's going on? Welcome to another live. Who you guys got for the election 2024? Trump or Harris as believers? Who you got? Let me know in the chat. Let's go. Remember, guys, to like, share, and subscribe. So level up together, motivate some more people. Let's go. So I'm streaming. I'll share the screen right here from this Fox. There we go.
Has strong support in Maryland's county executive has strong support in Maryland's heavily populated suburbs, but she's had to introduce herself to voters statewide. Also, Brooks is campaigning to keep retiring Maryland Senator Ben Cardin's seat blue. She opposes the Trump-era corporate tax breaks and says that policy needs to be changed in favor of workers and families. Also, Brooks campaigned Monday morning at the Greenbelt Metro Station, then rallied last night with Maryland Governor Wes Moore and Senators Ben Cardin and Chris Van Hollen in Riverdale. So again, polls are open until 8 p.m. here in Maryland. Also, if you have one of those mail-in ballots and you haven't turned it in yet, you can fill it out and drop it off at any of the official drop boxes. That has to be done by 8 p.m. We also want to let you know that you do have to vote at your precinct. So if you don't know that, you can go to our website or mobile app. We have all the resources for you where you can look that important information up. And have a great election day, guys.
Mel, thanks very much. We talked about the importance and the important roles that Maryland and Virginia might play in this election, from the Senate race in Maryland to the Senate race in Virginia. Tim Kaine looking to hold on to his seat there. And also, we're keeping an eye on two very close House races.
Maureen Ume is live in Fairfax this morning. Maureen, polls there have been open over an hour now. So how's the turnout looking where you are?
Actually, pretty good turnout. We've seen a stream of people coming in and out. I got to tell you, young people, that seems to be the story here. More young people coming in to vote this morning, some for their very first time. We talked to a couple, and hopefully we can turn around that sound for you soon. But, you know, Virginia is a state to watch. This is a state that's been solidly blue for many, many years now. But Republicans are hoping that they will get some victories, turning the state purple, perhaps. We'll have to wait and see. You talked about the important races we're watching. There are three of them. The Senate race, let's start there. That is the Senate race between Tim Kaine, who was the incumbent. He is a two-term senator seeking a third term. He is running against Hung Kao. Kao was looking to unseat that two-time Senator Kaine. The two went head-to-head in a single debate back in October, and they sparred over issues from illegal immigration to tariffs. Kaine previously served as a former Virginia governor, and you'll remember he was a former running mate to Hillary Clinton in the 2016 elections. Kao is a retired U.S. Navy captain. He served for 25 years in the military. He unsuccessfully ran in 2022 in Virginia's 10th congressional district, and according to a recent poll, he's actually trailing Kaine by 14 points. In the congressional races, we're paying close attention to the 10th and the 7th congressional districts. There is no incumbents on the ballot this year in any of those races. In the 10th district, current Democratic Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton decided not to seek re-election because of her health issues. So now the race is between Democrat Suhas Subramanian and Republican Mike Clancy. For years, this 10th district has been represented by Republicans. First, it was Frank Wolf and then Barbara Comstock, who was defeated by Wexton. But this time around, both candidates tell Fox 5 they feel good ahead of people voting today.
It's a big district, but we've got it's been a fun campaign. We've got a lot of tremendous energy, a lot of enthusiasm from the voters. And, it's really become a movement, and with a lot of great support.
Most importantly, I've talked to a lot of people that I already represent, and they've been very supportive of our campaign. So we feel really good right now.
Now, I want to talk about the 7th district, and Democrat Eugene Vindman is facing off against Republican Derek Anderson. Vindman has focused on reproductive rights and touted his military experience, while Anderson has talked about the economy and illegal immigration. Virginia has 11 House seats up for grabs today, and if Republicans can flip the 10th district and 7th district, that would really be a huge victory for them, again, helping to turn this state more purple than it is blue right now. But again, people still coming out to vote. We see more and more folks coming, and as I said at the top of this report, a lot of young people people voting today, hoping that their voices will help make the difference ultimately in the outcome of these elections. That's the very latest from here. Send it back to you guys in the studio.
We know there has been a push for young voters. Thank you so much, Maureen, for that report. Well, back in the district, officials are stepping up security across the city. Fencing is up at the White House and buildings nearby are boarded up.
Please leave the ads on my videos and earn rewards. It's a win-win. Pi.org is a free ad blocker that not only blocks.
Stephanie, good morning.
Good morning, Marissa. The Naval Observatory, also the home of the vice president's residence, no matter who the president is. And you can see behind us, that entire complex this morning is behind fencing. You'll also see a barrier in place there. And this is a lot of what you're going to see in other parts of the city as well, outside of the White House complex. And we're learning it's federal authorities who are the ones who decide the fencing. And then it's D.C. police's job to then protect and patrol the area around it. You mentioned Howard University, also fenced off. That is where Vice President Kamala Harris is having her election night watch party tonight. So you'll see heavy security there as well. And we do have a full list of the road closures that went into place at 7 o'clock last night, mainly on a main route of D.C., Georgia Avenue. And the closures will be stretching from Harvard Street to V Street Northwest. So be aware of that.
Yeah, who you guys got for the 2024 election? Let me know in the chat.
We know.
Donald Trump or Kamala Harris as believers. So let's go there.
And the winning side, wants to celebrate, and we want them to celebrate peacefully and responsibly as well. And the losing side, and the chief has already addressed this, may be feeling destructive, and that is not going to be tolerated.
And we know that D.C. police are going to be responding with a heavy security posture this year, but also with some new tools, a new Falcon 1 helicopter, drones, cameras. They have a new Joint Operations Command Center, as well as a new real-time crime center to not only address local D.C. issues, but big events with big crowds coming to the city, guys. We're also going to be checking out Howard University and what the security preps look like for today. We'll check in with you in the next hour. I'll send it back into you.
Stephanie, thanks very much. If you need a little quiet time for reflection, the Washington National Cathedral is holding an election prayer vigil. It's going to be open for private prayer and meditation all day until 10 o'clock tonight. Clergy will offer prayers between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. Also a service of noonday prayer. Tomorrow, the cathedral is open for private prayer and meditation from 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. And if you want to follow along the events of Election Day and of course, election results this evening, we got everything for you. On air and online, nonstop live local coverage you can get with the Fox Local app, and you can get that for your smartphone. The easiest thing to do is just scan the QR code you see on the screen right now, and that will lead you to download the Fox Local mobile app. And then again, nonstop coverage today until midnight. More information always online at fox5dc.com.
All right, and a quick content reminder as Fox 5 DC shares their campaign coverage plans right here on Live Now from Fox. We have our own election results coverage for you slated for 6 p.m. Eastern time. But of course, leading up to that coverage, full extensive coverage, as well as those campaign speeches, the victory speeches, the concession speeches. Also, as polling locations, fingers crossed, hopefully they don't have issues, but you all know every election season they do. Once those election commissions have those press conferences, you'll get those right here on Live Now from Fox as well. So make sure you're tuned in to Live Now from Fox all day today, and of course every day for your
Guys. So we got to make sure that we voting for the right party. You know what I mean? We got to make. Sorry about that. Yep, we got to make sure we voting for the right party, guys. Donald Trump or Kamala Harris as believers. We got to stand for things that is of the word. You know what I mean? Let's go. go, guys. Yeah, guys. So, yeah, as believers, we should be voting for the side that is standing more for the things that is of the Word of God. You know what I mean? Having, not having, things that they pushing on people in society that is not of the Word. So, as believers, we got to make sure we vote for the party that's pushing those agenda, the things that is of the Word, and not the things that is contradicting the Word. So let's go, guys. Like, share, and subscribe. Let's motivate some more people. Level up together. Let's go.
Good Day Atlanta at 7:30. I'm Ron Gant.
And I'm Elise Edie. We are so happy to have you with us on this Tuesday. It's a big
Election
day, right?
Day. Election Day is here.
Of course. So we'll talk a lot about that. Plus, of course, the forecast and traffic conditions for you. But we begin with this now. 30 people are without their home after an early morning apartment fire. The flames broke out in one of the buildings at the Hillcrest and Brookhaven apartment homes on Buford Drive. The cause of the fire is under investigation.
The Georgia Supreme Court has blocked a lower court's decision to extend the absentee ballot deadline in Cobb County. That means Cobb County may only count absentee ballots received by 7 p.m. tonight. Officials say this comes after thousands of absentee ballots were processed late.
And with Georgia's 16 electoral votes possibly deciding who will be the next president, the stakes couldn't be higher. Good Day's Mark Tachner was live out of Fulton County precinct, where we're talking about the wrap up of all of this. Mark, good morning. The big day.
Here at the Park Tavern precinct in Midtown, really all across the state. And just a reminder, the polls will stay open until 7 o'clock this evening. Now, they had a pretty good line up the doors. Those folks have been able to get in and out, though, fairly quickly. We managed to talk to a couple of folks. They said they were kind of surprised at the lines not being any longer. Maybe the reason for that, more than people already cast their ballots during the early, as well as those absentee ballots that came in. So like we said, we asked some of the folks why they decided to wait till election day to actually cast their ballot for who will be the next president.
Always vote early, but this year my voting place was Park Tavern. It's the only place you can get married, have an Oyster Fest, vote. So I was like, I have to cast my vote at Park Tavern.
Well, that's her reason. We've also heard from other folks that they wanted to vote on today because it's their tradition. They feel more like it's part of being the election. Another couple told us that they were trying to actually absentee vote, couldn't get the absentee ballot, which Brooke Zahner will talk about in time. So as a result of that, they had really no choice but to come out here and to cast a ballot because they missed the early voting period. You're going to hear from more of these voters throughout the morning here on Good Day Atlanta. But for now, that's the latest from here in Midtown. I'm Mark Tachner for Good Day Atlanta. Back to you guys.
All right, Mark, thank you. 7:33 now. Let's take a live look at a voting location in Cobb County. Polls opened up about 30 minutes ago. They'll close tonight at 7. Anyone in line then will still be able to vote. So keep that in mind. And just a reminder for voters this morning to avoid wearing any apparel with the candidate's political party or slogan to a polling place. It's 7:33. Meteorologist Joanne Feldman is joining us now with a check of our Election Day.
All right, so we appreciate our team, Fox 5 Atlanta. We've been pretty much taking you on a round robin across America this morning as polling locations are opening across the U.S. on this election day. I'm Jeanne Francine. We have to take our third 2-minute commercial break of the hour, and when we come back, we'll be showing some of your photos you've sent in on this election day. We've been asking you to send in those I voted photos, whether it's the I voted sticker, maybe you plastered it somewhere on your car, maybe you took a picture outside of your polling location. We'll be showing all of those photos when we come back in just 2 quick minutes. 7:48 is the time, and welcome back to Live Now from Fox. As promised, I want to get to some of the many photos we've received on this election day, Tuesday, November 5th. We have this one coming from Krishan out in Jersey City. He says, first in line, first to vote, I love America. Krishan, good morning. Thank you so much for sending this photo of you holding your I voted sticker. Let's get to another photo on this morning. This one comes from Caitlin Burns out in Texas. My 3 kiddos got to see the importance of voting. You see Vincent, Carly, and Blaze. Beautiful picture that you sent in. Thank you so much, and good morning to you. We have more photos coming in. This one coming from Norma. It says vote. Hey, I think this is the classiest way to get to the polls. Norma, you've given us all an idea of how we plan to vote today if we haven't done so. And then the hand clap right there. We're clapping right there with you. Beautiful photo. Thank you so much for sending in this video, Norma. Glad we got to see it. Let's get to one more really quickly. This one coming from S. Jean there. Voting for a better future. You can see she is choosing to vote for Trump this election season. As you know, we have 2 options this season. On the Republican side, you have former President Donald Trump. And then on the Democratic side, you have Vice President Kamala Harris. You decide 2024. You get to make your decision. On this election day, we want you to continue to send us your photos, and throughout the day, we'll be sharing them with you. Once I get off the host chair, my colleague Josh Breslow will continue to show those photos throughout your election day. All you have to do is scan that QR code on your screen or go to livenowfox.com/connect to send those photos. And hey, make sure you're staying tuned in because you just might see it right here on Live Now from Fox. 7:50 is the time. We are going to go to our final 2-minute commercial break of the hour. When we come back, heading out to the Sunshine State, you're getting a live look this morning out in Palm Beach, Florida, a beautiful polling location there. Beautiful conditions. I know many people say it seems like every election or maybe the day before election day, it's raining. I will say for many people, that was what they saw with early voting. But hey, if you're out in the Sunshine State of Florida, specifically out in Palm Beach, you don't have rain in the forecast. And you can see safety and security is top of mind this election day, as also you see police and security officers in full force at these polling locations. All right, going to this final 2-minute commercial break. When we come back, checking in with content partners out in the Sunshine State, Fox 35 Orlando, as they have a detailed interview plan to explain the Electoral College and how it works, specifically this election season 2024. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine. Want to get back to this polling location I was showing you before the break, which does take us out to Palm Beach of Florida, the Sunshine State, where we know people are exercising their right to vote on this election day. You can see already a line there on the left side of your screen as people are trying to get out early because, you know, the lines will be even longer throughout the day. Let's go ahead and check in with our content partners over at Fox 35 Orlando this morning as they have the detailed interview to explain the importance of the Electoral College and how it relates to this 2024 election season.
Welcome back, 745. So when you're watching the results come in tonight, pay attention to these states that are in purple. You've recognized them: Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania up for grabs. These are the swing states they talk about. Pennsylvania, really the biggest prize there. It's thought to be with 19 electoral votes. The candidate's trying to hit that magic number of 270. There are a lot of ways to do the math here. Joining us now to see how all of this works is Professor John Satcher. He is from UCF. So, Professor, good to see you this morning. Good morning.
Good to be here.
It's an exciting night for people that love elections, and there's a lot that goes into it. The Electoral College process, let's start with why that was put in place to begin with.
So Electoral College comes out of the Constitution. At the time of the Constitution, the Founding Fathers weren't exactly sure if they trusted democracy. It was also difficult to count votes. We live in an age of difficult communication. So the idea was that the voters in Georgia or, let's say, New York wouldn't know all the candidates. So they would elect electors, and those electors would be free agents. They would get to select who they wanted to be president. We, of course, moved far away from that. They didn't envision a world of political parties. They didn't envision a world of where electors were pretty much bound to support who we vote for on election day.
It's interesting. It's led Florida to be in the center of it. This year, we were not as much. Let's talk about a state that is, or a number of states. Some of these states, the swing states, if they're too close to call tonight, how do you see that playing out?
Well, it's going to be interesting because one of the things about the Electoral College is federalism. States have their own rules. So a state like Pennsylvania doesn't even start counting the early votes until today. So that means it could take a long time. A place like Georgia counts a little bit faster. So we could be talking about, if it's a close election, a week, 2 weeks. States have till December 11th to certify their vote for today. We're all hoping it doesn't draw out that far.
Right, and we've seen a lot of states even in arguing when these votes can come in. Most of that should be in place by now, where the state knows what their rules are today, correct?
I think 2020, people have fixed a lot of things since then. 2020, of course, had record numbers of vote by mail because it's during the pandemic. And now states have really tried to make it more efficient of what rules are going to be in place and how they're going to count those ballots. And so the sense is it's going to be quicker this time than it was in 2020. We'll learn our lessons.
One thing people will watch tonight is when races are called. But as you know, ultimately, the AP may call it, Fox News may call it, but that's not the deciding factor. Talk about that process.
What do you think about 2020? Arizona was called early, and then Arizona sort of flipped back out and was undecided. Essentially, the states, again, the states get to decide. The states count their votes. A place like Nevada, you can postmark. If you're postmarked by today, you still count. Other times, absentee ballots have to come in ahead of time or come in on election day. And so then we count, and we hope somebody gets to 270. Of course, we could end up in a scenario where we have a 269 tie even after all this counting is done.
What happens in that scenario?
In a 269 tie, the vote is thrown into the House of Representatives, which
here on Good Day Orlando. Stay with us.
Second thoughts about the law firm you hired? There's a reason people choose Todd Minor Law.
Daytona International Speedway welcomes RV Show USA. All right, that was our Fox 35 Orlando team. We're going to be checking in with our different affiliates all over the country here, as we do have them in the pivotal swing states and also in other states as well, including our Fox 35 Orlando team. Do want to take you out to this image right here of the Capitol building, as it is hard to believe, but it is Election Day. Do want to remind you here that we are going to have those results coming up at 6 p.m. Eastern time as they start to come into the area. We're going to make sure to bring those to you with Andrew Kraft and Austin Westfall, as well as the rest of our team. Again, you can start watching that coverage here, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Also, we are going to have continuing coverage all throughout the day, so make sure to stick with us here on Live Now from Fox. We're also checking in with our friends over at Fox, as they are scattered all across the country right now. Let's send it over to Doug Luzader for a look at how things are shaping up.
Election Day is finally here. Polls open for this one last day as millions of Americans cast their votes.
We've been waiting for 4 years for this.
In his closing message to voters, former President Donald Trump wrapped up his campaign, making a final blitz across swing states, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and finally Michigan.
Everybody's got to vote.
And in Philadelphia, Vice President Kamala Harris held a final star-studded rally alongside Lady Gaga and Oprah.
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win?
And in keeping with tradition, New Hampshire's small town of Dixville Notch kicked off Election Day voting at midnight, with all 6 of their registered voters casting their votes and resulting in a tie.
I have been a Republican most of my life, but I find myself in conflict with the Republican Party at this time.
But at this time, it is Election Day. And if early voting is an indicator, Election Day turnout this Tuesday is expected to be high.
Our democracy only functions when we all participate. So not only do I hope that everybody votes, but I hope they understand that these are normal people running our elections, right? It's people from all walks of life, all political parties. And, you know, your neighbors, your friends are wanting to make
EVE Online on Mac immerses you in a universe with thousands of star systems like never before. Follow a path of your own choosing and
bringing us the latest information.
Hey guys, who you voting for? 2024 election. Who you got? Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? We gotta, if you're a believer, you gotta vote for the side that most align with the word, not how we feel, our emotion. All those, we wanna make sure to align with the word. The things they're pushing on children and all these things, we don't wanna, we don't wanna tolerate those things as believers. So,
right.
Let's go.
That's right.
Who you got? Trump or Harris? Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? The Queen building. Let's go. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. Let's motivate some more people. Level up together. Let's go.
That's right. Trump 2024. Let's go.
Been spent in the race to succeed retiring Maryland Senator Ben Cardin.
Former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan is facing off against Prince George's County Executive Angela Alsobrooks. And Fox 5's Melanie Allwich, she's been following this race closely all morning long. She is live in Upper Marlboro with more. Mel, good morning.
Hey, good morning. In just the hours since the polls have opened, the excitement is building. We've gone from Bowie over here to Upper Marlboro. We're now at Wise High School, and you can hear everybody very enthusiastic about making this a day to remember. Now, I also want to show you live pictures from Davidsonville, Maryland, where that is where Governor Larry Hogan is expected to vote this morning. So again, we're seeing enthusiasm and turnout all across the state. You know, many voters were motivated to get out and cast their ballots first thing this morning. We did talk to some who told us they actually ran into obstacles because their polling location had changed. So if you were with us earlier this morning, you remember I was telling you, you need to make sure that you check what your polling location is, because it may have changed. And we did run into one woman this morning who found that that was the case for her, but she told us it was too important for her to give up on voting this morning.
Very important. My grandmother stood on the line with Dr. Martin Luther King. She had her face spat in, so it's very important. 4 polling places at out an hour this morning. Nothing could hold me down.
Opened at 7, they close at 8 p.m. And as we mentioned, you must vote in your designated polling place. So if you're not sure, or if you think the location may have changed, please check before you head out. We'll have all the resources for you on our website, fox5dc.com, as well as on our mobile app. Make sure you check in there, and we'll be here all morning long to see how things are going. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Mel, thanks much on this election day. All eyes on Virginia as well, which could be a key swing state.
The Commonwealth has trended blue for some time now, but some race results tonight could help turn the state purple. Fox 5's Maureen Ume is live in Fairfax with the latest details. Maureen, good morning.
Good morning. We've seen a steady stream of people coming here to the government center to vote. Among them, young people who are voting in their very first presidential election. They're very excited to have their voices heard, all of them hoping, of course, to make a difference. Both sides are looking at here, the Commonwealth, to see exactly what happens with the voting and elections and the results here, because, again, as you said, that could tilt the balance of power. We're talking about specific races here, in particular, the senatorial seat that's up for grabs here. This is Tim Kaine's seat. He's a 2-term senator looking for his 3rd term. He's running against opponent Hung Kao, a retired U.S. Navy captain, served for 25 years in the military. Kao unsuccessfully ran in 2022 in Virginia's 10th congressional district. But according to a recent poll, Kao is trailing Kaine right now by 14 points. In that hotly contested 10th congressional district, there is no incumbent on the ballot this year. Current Democratic Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton decided not to seek re-election because of her health issues. The race is now between Democrats Suhas Subramanian and Republican Mike Clancy. And then in the 7th district, Democrat Eugene Vindman is facing off against Republican Derek Anderson. Vindman has focused on reproductive rights and touted his military experience. Anderson has talked about the economy and illegal immigration. We did speak with voters this morning, some of whom, as I said, are young first-time voters. They say they're glad today has finally come. They hope their votes do make a difference.
And there's going to be a lot more young people coming out to vote, and I think that's really going to make a difference.
I think everybody's anxious. Like, for the rest of the day, I'll just be sitting, like, waiting to find out who's going to win. And it does make me sad that we're so polarized, but I mean, it is what it is. Hopefully it gets better. Probably.
It's exciting to take part in, especially in such a polarizing time, like Mom just said. But yeah, it is scary that we'll find out in 24 hours or something like that by the end of the week.
Well, we certainly hope to find out who the winners are sooner than later. Polls here stay open until 7 o'clock. A reminder that you have to vote in your precinct here in Virginia. We've had a few people come here to the government center thinking that they can vote here. You cannot. You've got to vote in your particular district, the precinct rather. So be sure you're aware of that before you head out to vote today. Polls again open until 7 o'clock. That's the very latest. Listening back to you guys in the studio.
That's right. Double check. We have links on our website too, fox5dc.com.
All right, a big thank you there to our Fox 5 DC team. We are going to be checking in with them as well as our other Fox affiliates. And what I do want to show you is a live image we have. You can see all those vote here signs right there. That is the Cobb County Civic Center over in Georgia, one of the several sites that we do have images of here on Live Now from Fox. Now, we also have this one that is coming in. This is a look over at Springfield, Ohio. We have cameras everywhere. Springfield, Ohio. We have cameras everywhere, as I mentioned, and we'll bring you those live looks all throughout the day. Now, we've talked a lot about the race for the presidency, but this election, both parties are also fighting for control of both the House and Senate. Right now, Republicans do have that slim majority in the House, while Democrats have a slim majority in the Senate. Voters, though, could change all of that. To help discuss, I do want to bring in Laura Tammen, a political science professor over at Pace University. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Of course, I know it's a busy day for everyone, so we definitely appreciate it. Now, I want to talk a little bit about these congressional races. Why are they so important, and why are people paying such close attention today?
So, the way that our system of government works, Congress is essential to passing laws and legislation. And who wins Congress is really going to determine what the president is able to do, regardless of which person wins the presidency. So, the race for Congress is incredibly consequential for governing moving forward.
And when we do talk about specific congressional races, I know there are quite a few of them, but which ones are you maybe keeping a closer eye on?
Right. So while a lot of folks are looking at the swing states for the presidential, I'm actually looking at coastal states for the congressional. So I'm looking at New York and California. New York in part because that's where I live, but there are two really key races there, New York 19 and New York 16. And New York 19 is extremely competitive, but Biden won and there's a Republican incumbent. And similarly, New York 16, Biden also won. And the Republican congressional candidate there, Congressman Lawler, has really run a flawless campaign. And the Democrat in the race, Mondaire Jones, has not run what I would call a flawless campaign. So given how competitive this is, if Jones manages to win, that'll really tell us something about where the rest of the races are going.
I do want to ask, because you have this political expertise, does it appear right now, just based on the polling and things of that nature, that we could see a swap as far as who is in control of the House and Senate? And if that did happen, what exactly would it mean?
So, swapping who controls it. We say in every election, it's close, but this one, it's really, really close in all branches. So we could have a situation where the president is of a different party than the House, which is rare, but it could happen this year. And that will really hamper the president's ability to enact their agenda. So if that happens, I would expect that we're actually going to see very little progress in legislation because there will be so much gridlock. The Senate is our best. We can make our firmest predictions about the U.S. Senate, right? The U.S. Senate seems poised to shift into Republican control. But the House is totally up for grabs. There's really no telling. And it's possible that whoever wins the presidency will be able to bring the Congress along, meaning that people who are showing up to vote for whoever wins president also cast their vote for that party down ballot. But these races are so close that those swing voters or independents who are split ticket voters could make all the difference here also. So it's really easy to imagine all sorts of scenarios. It's kind of mind-boggling if you're someone who analyzes elections for a living. There are just a lot of possible outcomes.
When you talk about looking at some of the results of the congressional races, does that give you kind of an indicator overall of who might have won the electoral votes there for the presidency, or is there not always kind of a correlation?
Well, usually it does, but things are so close. When they're really close, small numbers of voters can make a big difference. So it gives you a sense, yes, but there's really no telling because of our system. The majority rules, right? So the person with the most number of votes wins, and how close it is doesn't really matter in terms of control. So it'll give us a sense, but it's not determinate.
What do you think is one maybe big misconception that voters, people out there, Americans have about these congressional races overall? I know that's kind of a broad question, but I want to get your take on that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. I think that the most important misconception is that they don't really matter. So the president can do very little by themselves. They have to have a Congress they can work with. So who is elected to Congress is really essential for making our government function, and for the president to be able to get things done. So while a lot of people only interact with their member of Congress when they need their passport expedited, or when they have a constituent issue, who they are in Washington has significant impacts on their everyday lives in ways that are really hard to see. But these races are essential, and communicating with voters is essential for these campaigns about these races. That's part of why we saw Kamala Harris's campaign put a lot of time and resources into promoting what they call down ballot races, which are races other than the top of the ticket for president, because they know that who controls the legislatures is going to have a big impact on what they're able to do.
Any other state or maybe even local races that you're paying close attention to that maybe most Americans are as well?
I'm paying close attention in New York to the ballot proposition. So the first ballot proposition would essentially enshrine abortion rights into New York's constitution. It's been a contentious issue here in New York, not because abortion is a contentious issue, but it sort of got caught up in the trans rights debate as well. So I'm interested to see where that goes. Also here in New York City, we have a few other ballot propositions that were put on the ballot really by the mayor to try to consolidate power. So being a New York City resident, that's obviously of interest to me, to see if folks vote to give the mayor of New York City more power or less power.
All right, Laura Tamman, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and help kind of break it all down. A lot of races on the ballot, and I know most people are paying close attention to the presidential race, but we have these congressional races as well. Anything else you want to add here before I let you go?
I just hope everyone gets the chance to go out and vote today and be a part of the process, and even volunteer as a poll checker or a poll worker at this election or future ones, because our democracy only works if we all participate and help take care of it.
All right, Laura Tamman there, political science professor over at Pace University. Thank you again for taking the time to be here with us today. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, anytime.
And I do want to take you to just one of our many maps we're going to show you all throughout the day. As we know, there are 7 states that are considered to be battleground states this election day. We're talking Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. All of those highlighted right there on the map. And polls did open this hour in Arizona, Arkansas, Iowa, Minnesota, Mississippi, Oklahoma, North Dakota, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, and Wisconsin. Again, a lot of states. You're going to hear all about this all throughout the day. Do want to take you out to some of the live images that we do have popping up from those polling centers here. This is a live look over at Springfield, Ohio. And we also have this shot. Could see a reporter kind of pop up there. So if we see him, we'll kind of go to another area. But this here is an election site. This is over at the Houston Toyota Center over in Houston, Texas. Also got this image coming in here, and this appears to be over in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. That is going to be a big pivotal county there in the swing state of the 8:17 on the East Coast and 5:17 on the West Coast. Going to head to our first 2-minute commercial break of the hour. On the other side, we'll check back in with our different Fox affiliates for a look at some of your headlines here as they're following their races very closely. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back.
Let's go, guys. Let's go. Who you got for the election? You got Trump or Harris? As believers, who you got? Let me know in the chat. Stand for righteousness, guys. Let's go. Who you got in the 2020 in the selection 2044? Let's go. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. Motivate some more people. Let's go. Don't forget. Remember, guys, you wanna vote based on what is of the word, not what people are trying to push that is going against the word. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want to try to push things on children in school, all those things. We don't want to, that's not of the word, right? We gotta we gotta make sure we should vote for the party that is off, that's standing more for the word, for righteousness. Let's go. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. Let's motivate some more people. Let's go. Trump or Harris, who you got? Let's go.
You're on live now from Fox 819 on the East Coast and 519 on the West Coast. Want to take you out to this video from a bit earlier on this morning as a small town in New Hampshire keeping up that tradition overnight. Now, the handful of people who live in Dixville Notch cast their ballots as the clock struck midnight local time. The township home to only 13 people, with only 6 people registered there to vote. So they cast their ballots. You can see it in the ballot box there. Now, we know that each candidate earned half the vote, with 3 votes for Trump and 3 votes for Harris. All right, I do want to check in a battleground state right now with our Fox 5 Atlanta team, as they do have an array of reporters out gathering all of the latest.
Already cast their ballots. Millions more will join the ranks and wait in lines likely outside of polling centers as Americans flex their civic muscles to elect a new president.
We're going to have the American dream back soon. Together, we will begin the 4 greatest years in the history of our country, and we will launch the most extraordinary economic boom the world has ever seen.
And we have an opportunity in this election to finally turn the page on a decade of politics that has been driven by fear and division. We are done with that. We're done.
And this presidential race will be decided by 7 battleground states, one of which is Georgia. And that's why we have been bombarded with campaign ads and candidate visits. And Good Day's Mark Teichner kicks off our You Decide 2024 team coverage live from a Fulton County polling precinct. Mark, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. The bell of the ball. We've been for the last couple of months, and now we're going to see if all of that campaign advertising and visits will pay off, and if so, for which party. We are here at Park Tavern polling precinct in Midtown, and when we saw them open the doors a little over an hour ago, there was about 20, 30 folks waiting in line to cast their ballots. They've been able to get in and out fairly quickly, and we've seen a steady flow going in, but certainly no kind of long lines that are going to cause folks to be dissuaded from coming out and making their voice heard, at least not at this particular location. Now, as we know, a lot of folks were encouraged by both parties to try to come out and take advantage of early voting. We saw record early voting numbers, more than 4 million ballots cast when you include the early voting advanced, in person, and the absentee. So we decided to ask some of these folks about why they decided to wait until Election Day.
And in some ways, I think since 2020, it has become a little harder to vote. I mean, we couldn't get an absentee ballot because they don't send them out until October 7th. Well, we left on October 10th, so we wouldn't even have gotten it. And we didn't come back until November 2nd, which was after early voting.
Yeah, another voter told us that the reason they decided to vote on Election Day is it's a tradition, and they feel more like it's a part of the excitement that comes along with all of this. The good news with all of those early voting numbers is that hopefully the lines are going to be a lot shorter than we have seen in previous years. Now, coming up in the next half hour, you're going to hear from another voter about why they're coming out and what they're hoping to accomplish and whether they think we're going to be able to put all of this sort of division behind us when this is all said and done. Reporting live from Midtown, I'm Mark Teichner for Good Day Atlanta.
All right, we will check back in with you then, Mark. Thank you. Well, now in Cobb County, thousands of voters who received absentee ballots late will not get an extension to return them.
Good Day's Brooks Honor is live at the Cobb County Civic Center with more on what a stayed state Supreme Court decision means. Brooke.
Yeah, well, this is definitely a big impact for thousands of voters here in Cobb County. We're told about 3,400 absentee ballot requests were late, according to county election officials, and this all got brought into the court system, and that ruling came down from the Georgia Supreme Court. But Cobb County election leaders blame a surge in last-minute absentee ballot requests and equipment failures as part of the reason for that delay. So the order that just came down only addresses a motion for a stay. That means a final ruling has not yet been made in this case. But for the time being, Cobb County election officials may only count absentee ballots that are received by 7 p.m. tonight. And we talked to a voter who requested an absentee ballot and never got that ballot.
I went online and I requested a ballot. A few weeks, something was mailed to me, but it ended up not being the actual ballot. It ended up being another request for the ballot. So I just found out a few days ago that I couldn't do an absentee ballot.
Fortunately for her, she noticed in time and was able to make plans and adjustments to come to her polling precinct on Election Day. And that is what election workers encourage you to do if you want to make sure that that vote is counted, that you cancel your absentee ballot and you go to your polling precinct. Or alternatively, if you have the absentee ballot, you can also turn that in directly to your county election office. That's the latest here live in Cobb County. I'm Brooks Honor for Good Day Atlanta.
Okay, Brooke, thanks for explaining that for us. We're also keeping watch of other elections on the ballot, including the race for the state legislature. All 56 Senate and 180 House seats are on the ballot. We're also watching congressional elections. Races for the House and Senate will determine which party holds the majority and several tax measures. Now, don't forget to join Fox 5 Atlanta for complete election coverage. It starts this afternoon at...
All right, and we have complete election coverage right here on Live Now from Fox. My name is Josh Breslow, and I'm here for the next several hours. All of your top stories and live events, and no question, we are going to be focused around the clock here on the election. Want to pop this up for you and let you know that our real primetime coverage will start tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll have Austin Westfall, the whole team here to bring you those results. The second they come in, you will be the first to know. And I know you have a lot of options tonight, but I can promise you, Live Now from Fox will be the best one. Taking a live look right here over in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, as folks are lined up here on Election Day. The polls are open and they are ready to vote. Now, this is, of course, a swing state, but Bucks County very important to both candidates as they do try to win the pivotal swing state of Pennsylvania. Do want to head to a quick break here at 8:26 on the East Coast and 5:26 on the West Coast. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. The time 8:29 on the East Coast and 5:29 on the West Coast. Do want to take a live look here at one of our many live cameras inside voting poll locations. I was trying to see. It looks like that guy has a very large ballot there. You are looking over in Brooklyn, New York. This is, again, just one of the many shots that we do have across the country. We'll be taking a look at these different cameras all throughout the day. Want to pop up this map for you. Take a look right here as people in 4 states will vote on the future of marijuana legislation today. Florida, Nebraska, North Dakota, and South Dakota will have marijuana on the ballot. Now, former President Trump has said that he supports Florida's legalization of marijuana and that if elected, he will work with Congress to, quote, pass common sense laws regarding marijuana. Vice President Harris has said that she feels, quote, we need to legalize marijuana and stop criminalizing the behavior. And in Massachusetts, medical and recreational marijuana is already legal, but voters will decide whether to decriminalize the personal use of psychedelic substances, which, by the way, are already legal in Oregon and Colorado. A lot to discuss, no question, so I do want to bring in Heather Trella, the Director of Operations and Fellow at the Rockefeller Institute of Government. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and help us break it all down.
Happy to be here.
All right, so first off, the big question, are we talking about the same initiative essentially in all 4 states, or how do they really differ?
Well, in Florida, North Dakota, and South Dakota, we're talking about legalizing recreational or adult use marijuana. And in Nebraska, we're talking about legalizing medical marijuana. So that's one key difference. Nebraska also split their initiatives into 2. So their voters are actually looking at 2 initiatives. One to permit medical marijuana usage, and another to create, commercialize, and sell medical marijuana. Otherwise, they're fairly similar. The recreational states are mostly 20. Some have, do not, but nothing dramatically different.
Speaking kind of broadly right here, when you talk about the 2 different parties, obviously Republicans and Democrats, as of right now, as of today, is there one party that still remains pro-marijuana and one that is anti-marijuana? And has that changed kind of over the years and decades?
Yeah, I break that into 2 groups. Among voters, it is a mostly bipartisan issue. I think we're hovering at about 76% of Americans approve of legalization. Some generational differences. Where you see the more partisan differences is in elected officials. Republicans do tend to be a little bit more apprehensive or obstructionist for passing marijuana legalization. Federal, state, there are obviously exceptions to that rule, but in general, in states where legalization efforts have failed at the state level through the legislative process, it has been the Republican legislators that have blocked it.
And you are taking a look once again at the map. We're talking about those 4 states, Florida, Nebraska, South Dakota, and North Dakota. Do we know at this point how this could go in those states with marijuana on the ballot? Do we have kind of an early indicator?
Yeah, looking at polling, Nebraska is probably the most likely of these states to pass their initiative today. They do, however, are mired in a legal challenge, so it's possible that this ballot measure will get thrown out and the votes will not count. Florida is kind of a toss-up with the higher threshold to pass a ballot measure. In Florida, you need 60%, not 50%. Polling is hovering a little around 60, so it could go either way. North Dakota and South Dakota, this is their 3rd attempt in both states. And so it's less likely that it'll pass, could be a surprise, but less likely it'll pass in either of those states, not polling particularly well.
Do you think that once you see kind of the results today that we could essentially see more states put this on the ballot? There are several states where, you have marijuana that is legalized already, but do you think this is going to lead to maybe more initiatives in other states based on the results?
I think we're going to see more ballot initiatives, but regardless of the results. Just as I said, this is the 3rd try in 2 states. And because it is so politically popular with voters, in states where there are ballot initiatives and they can put things on the ballot without having to go through the legislature, I think you'll continue to see these challenges. Several states are also pending. I know there's a few states that are looking forward to 2026 to possibly attempt. So yeah, I would say that, this will be significant if these passes. These will be major inroads into the Midwest and the South for recreational marijuana. But I think you'll continue to see this trend of states continuing to try to pass.
And I want to talk about the fifth state that I mentioned a short time ago, because Massachusetts voters are going to decide whether to decriminalize the personal use of psychedelic substances. I know that you wrote a piece about how advocates for legalizing psilocybin, I'm hoping I say that right, mushrooms, are following similar means, essentially, as those who are looking to legalize marijuana. Tell me about that and essentially what you found as you wrote that piece.
Yeah, historically, there's been kind of phases of legalizing marijuana, and that's been the same playbook that psilocybin advocates have been using. Decriminalization is generally the first step, just taking the criminal penalty away from possession. And then the second step is kind of emphasizing the medical treatments. In states that have legalized, it has been the push has been to help with the folks with therapy, PTSD. And then finally, the third hurdle, the third kind of goalpost is recreational usage. And so in the states that have legalized or attempt, you're seeing this, many cities have decriminalized psilocybin across the United States. So that's step one. 2 states have legalized with a focus on medical treatment. So that's step 2. And I think we're a ways off from step 3. People look for different therapeutic uses for illicit substances.
All right. Heather Trella, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. We really appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to add at all?
No, this is going to be a significant. If Florida and the states in the Midwest all pass, that's going to be no longer a coastal issue. Marijuana will be in the heartland and be in the South. So this could have a great significance.
All right. Thank you again for being here with us. We appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
And we do have our Fox 29 Houston team. It looks like they are conducting an interview. Not sure if this is a voter or official, but let's pop up the audio and listen in.
It's a humbling experience. It's something that we've worked hard to be able to get to. And I really do hope that we can represent a new era of politics coming in, one that can restore trust and faith from the American people and the people of New Jersey. So I'm very humbled to be here and hopeful for America today.
Congressman, the seat wasn't necessarily open just a few months ago. Talk about taking over the seat for a senator who had to resign in disgrace.
Yeah, I think a lot of people right now in New Jersey and frankly around this country, have a deep distrust in government. I mean, right now we live in the time of the greatest amount of distrust in government in modern American history. 84% of people in New Jersey surveyed believe that their politicians are corrupt. That is what is contributing to the undermining of our democracy and the concerns that so many of us have about what comes next. For me, I want my country to be able to deliver for my 2 little boys, but we're not going to be able to get that done if we continue to have this level of distrust. So that was exactly why I stepped up. I did not plan to run for Senate. This was not something I had in the cards, but I felt it was important to give the people of New Jersey a choice and to try to restore a sense of public service in our politics, which at a time when I think so many people are just yearning for in it for the right reasons, not just chasing ego. And I never feel confident, but I feel like I've done everything. This is my 4th election in my 4th election day in less than 6 years. I'm approaching this with the same level of intensity. My mission on election day, where we just the 2 of us drive around the state of Jersey and just kind of soak in the moment. Done everything we can. Now it's up to the voters.
Thank you.
All good? Okay, great. Thank you, everybody.
Gonna wait online?
Yeah, I'm gonna wait in line. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody, for coming on out today. Yeah.
All right. And that was Senate hopeful Andy Kim, a Democrat there, voting over in New Jersey. He said he is going to wait in line, and it looks like he brought his children along. Again, we are going to be checking in with our different Fox affiliates here throughout the day as they speak with the political candidates there who are waiting in line, just like you and I, over at the polling sites. As of right now, we are at 8:38 on the East Coast and 5:38 on the West Coast. There are polling sites that are open right now in at least 39 states. And as we do progress through the hours, obviously more and more of those sites will open. We're going to head to a quick break here, but we'll have more coverage of Election Day coming up in just a few. My name is Josh Breslow, and you're watching Live Now from Fox.
All right, guys, who you got for the 2024 election as believers? Who you got? You got Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? Let me know in the chat. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, guys. Let's motivate some more people. Level up together. Let's go. Let's go, guys. We want to stand for things that is of the word, righteousness, all those things. So we want to choose a party that's more aligned with those things. So make sure so when we vote, we want to make sure that we have those things in mind, not about our feeling, emotion, all those things. Make sure align with the word. Let's go. Let's go, guys. Remember, just to like, share, and subscribe, guys. Let's go. Let's go. Also, as based on my understanding too, Kamala Harris wants to tax unrealized gains on your home, on a home. So if you own a property and you haven't sold it yet, based on my understanding, she wants to tax the money that the house, the value of the unrealized gains of the house, which is kind of absurd to me. So remember, guys, check out the chat too. They'll have a poll. Let me know who you're voting for in the chat. And like, share, and subscribe. Let's go.
On
ranked choice voting to the district. So this is a bit of a contentious issue for the mayor and the council chairman who oppose this, but many people do support bringing ranked choice voting to DC. Today, voters will decide on Initiative 83. And in addition, if you look at Maryland, they have a abortion ballot initiative on the ballot. And this would really enshrine the reproductive right for abortion in the state constitution. It would make it much harder for lawmakers in the future in the state to roll back abortion rights. And so this is one of 10 states across the nation today voting on a abortion-related ballot initiative.
I know when it comes to that one in Maryland, early on, there was a lot of confusion in terms of how it was written that some voters were concerned about.
Sure. I mean, it's also sort of maybe not intuitive just to think about Maryland being a deep blue state. You might not think Maryland would be a battleground for abortion rights per se. And I don't think that's what the drafters were sort of had in mind, but they really wanted to go and enshrine it in the Constitution of the state that abortion, there's the right to it, and that reproductive rights would be protected. It's sort of going a step further than what is already allowed in terms of the protective state of abortion, which is already legal in all pregnancy stages in the state.
We have about 30 seconds left. Junaid, finally, let's get in Virginia and its amendment.
Yes, there is an amendment in Virginia as well. It's a real estate property tax exemption that would be expanded to spouses of soldiers killed in duty. Right now, there is a real estate tax exemption for spouses of soldiers killed in action. This would expand it to all soldiers killed in the line of duty as well. Their spouses would benefit from this real estate tax exemption as well if that passes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for breaking those down. We focus so much on the candidates, but those amendments are crucially important as well, and voters will see them on their ballot. So we appreciate your time and expertise, Mr. Junaid Dill of Axios. Have a good election day.
You too. Have a great one, everyone.
Steve.
All right, another change at the X platform, formerly Twitter. This time when it comes to the block button. We'll explain those changes after the break. And as we go to break, if you do see news happening, you have a news tip, something going on in your neighborhood, let us know all about it so that we can get you some coverage. You can email us, fox5dc@fox.com, or give the news desk a call, 202-895-3000. And you can pass along your tip directly to someone there. In the meantime, we'll be right back. More election coverage coming up on air and on Fox Local.
A big thank you there to our Fox 5 DC team. We're going to be checking in with them and our other affiliates across the country as we break down those race results, but also the situations at those different polling sites. We'll keep you updated on any issues that might arise. And I do want to remind you that coming up tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, that is when our prime time coverage does get underway here on Live Now from Fox. We will have our crew gathering all of those results. The second they come in, you will be the first to know if you're watching us here on Live Now from Fox. Do want to remind you, of course, that there are other races that are on the ballot aside from the presidential race. Take a live look over at you can see the Capitol building there in D.C. as both parties are fighting for control of both the House and Senate. Right now, Republicans have that slim majority in the House, while Democrats have a slim majority in the Senate. But if Democrats take the House and Republicans take the Senate, it would be the first time in history, the first time ever, that both chambers of Congress have flipped to opposing political parties. Now, as far as campaign fundraising for those races goes, it's a lot. Federal election officials say $2.5 billion has been spent on the Senate races, while the House races have cost almost $1 billion. We'll keep an eye on all of those races as well, and we'll get a little more local as well for some that folks are watching very closely. Do want to head to our final 2-minute commercial break of the hour here at 8:47 on the East Coast and 5:47 on the West Coast. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Good morning, everyone, and welcome in here on Live Now from Fox. The time 8:49 on the East Coast and 5:49 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow. It's Election Day, and we are here to bring you all of your coverage with the help of our different Fox affiliates across the country. We've been checking in with them, and we're actually going to check in with our Fox 5 Atlanta team in just a second. But I do want to bring you out to this live image here. This is actually one of their reporters who is out there at the Cobb County Civic Center, where folks are showing up to vote. Now, you can see all of the vote here signs there, and the door is propped open, but it does not appear that there's a line out the door, as we've seen in some locations. Now, I do want to check in here with our Fox 5 Atlanta team for a look at their coverage, as they have an array of reporters covering the race from each and every angle.
They've already closed in one New England town.
Meanwhile, both candidates return to familiar territory with Vice President Harris in D.C. and Donald Trump in Florida. Fox's Doug Luzader joins us live from West Palm Beach. Doug, good morning.
Good morning, and the former president has arrived back here in Florida after some final campaign stops. We expect him to vote in person, and then we all wait for these results to come in today. Election Day is finally here. Polls open for this one last day as millions of Americans cast their votes.
We've been waiting for 4 years for this.
In his closing message to voters, former President Donald Trump wrapped up his campaign, making a final blitz across swing states, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and finally Michigan.
Everybody's got to vote.
And in Philadelphia, Vice President Kamala Harris held a final star-studded rally alongside Lady Gaga and Oprah.
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win?
And in keeping with tradition, New Hampshire's small town of Dixville Notch kicked off Election Day voting at midnight, with all 6 of their registered voters casting their votes and resulting in a tie.
I have been a Republican most of my life, but I find myself in conflict with the Republican Party at this time.
But at this time, it is Election Day. And if early voting is an indicator, Election Day turnout this Tuesday is expected to be high.
Our democracy only functions when we all participate. So not only do I hope that everybody votes, but I hope they understand that these are normal people running our elections, right? It's people from all walks of life, all political parties. And, you know, your neighbors, your friends are wanting to make sure that this runs well.
Now, the Trump campaign has a watch party here in West Palm Beach today. Vice President Kamala Harris will attend a watch party of her own in the nation's capital. Back to you guys.
All right, Doug, you mentioned the former president will cast his ballot today in person. Any word on whether the vice president will mail hers in or not?
Yeah, she's already mailed. She's already voted by mail. Yeah, when the former president votes today, the candidates will both cast their ballots.
All right, Doug, thank you.
Well, with polls now open in Georgia, there's a plan in place to keep everyone safe.
That's after rumors started circulating about groups planning to intimidate voters. Good Day's Caitlin Pratt is live in Tucker with the Election Day security plan. Caitlin.
Okay, thank you.
To you both, we actually switched locations now to right near the DeKalb County Jail, the elections office here in DeKalb County, Avondale Estates area. We have noticed police at both locations have been this morning, but not particularly like a sense of urgency, if that makes sense. So let's talk about what prompted this this closer look at Election Day here in Georgia. DeKalb County saying that they received or looked into some rumors of threatening texts and posts against minorities about Election Day, determining ultimately that those threats were not credible. And in Atlanta, Mayor Andre Dickens says they're collaborating with neighboring agencies, making sure any voter in Atlanta can vote without any fear, any intimidation, or any violence.
We have the cleanest voter list in the entire country. We have photo ID for all forms of voting. At the end of the day, it's going to be fair and fast and accurate.
If you do encounter a problem at the polls, please contact your county board of registrar's office or the Georgia Secretary of State. You can also submit a complaint online to the Secretary of State Elections Division. Law enforcement basically reminding everyone, if you see something that doesn't seem right, go ahead and contact them. That's the latest here live in DeKalb County. I'm Caitlin Pratt for Good Day Atlanta.
All right, KP, thank you. 8:19 is now your time, and coming up on Good Day Atlanta, state officials in North Carolina put up tents at polling stations severely damaged by Hurricane Helene. How the state is making sure that everyone can vote.
All right, that was our Fox 5 Atlanta team. We're going to be checking in with them and our other affiliates. But as you saw there, we do have affiliates in many of those 7 swing states. I want to pop up this map for you so I can give you a look at the swing states that we are keeping an eye on here. Again, that is a look right there on your screen of the map. Again, 7 swing states: Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. Do want to send it over to Madison Scarpino with Fox News as she breaks down more from the ground.
The momentum is on our side.
Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign is hoping to ride that momentum to victory. But as her team is busy with Election Day preparations, security is popping up across Washington, D.C., at the White House and at Howard University, where Harris graduated, and the site of her election night watch party. Local officials are warning communities about engaging in violence once election results are released.
The losing side may be feeling destructive, and that is not going to be tolerated.
Harris spent all of Monday traveling around Pennsylvania, knocking on doors and speaking at rallies in Allentown, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia. She got a helping hand of star power along the way from Katy Perry, Lady Gaga, and Oprah Winfrey.
Deciding not to decide, that is most definitely a vote to let other people control your future.
Former President Donald Trump campaigned Monday in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Trump will host his election night watch party in West Palm Beach, Florida.
We do not have to settle for weakness.
Meanwhile, the tiny town of Dixville Notch, New Hampshire, conducted its famous midnight vote. Ballots from the 6 residents there show the vote split directly down the middle.
All right, that was Madison Scarpino there with Fox News reporting on the latest. Of course, we are going to keep you covered right here on Live Now from Fox all throughout the day. And I do want to remind you that our primetime coverage here with those election results does begin at 6 p.m. Eastern time tonight. You're going to hear me say that a lot, but I want to make sure that you know Live Now from Fox is the place to be. The second that those results come in, you will be the first to know if you're watching us here on Live Now. And we are taking a look at some of our live cameras right here. You can see folks in line, and that line going out the door. This is, again, one of our many cameras over in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. This is where it's a pivotal state. Folks are paying very close attention to that area, and that is why we are checking in with our Fox 29 Philadelphia team for a look at their coverage continuously. Now, I do want to also check in with some of our folks who are over with our Fox 5 Atlanta team. They are keeping an eye on that swing state. Let's pop up the audio here and listen in.
President Kamala Harris will be in Washington, D.C. at her alma mater, Howard University. Former President Donald Trump will watch from Florida.
The presidential race will be decided by 7 battleground states, one of which is Georgia. And that's why we have absolutely been bombarded with campaign ads and with candidate visits. Good Day's Mark Tigner picks up our You Decide 2024 team coverage live from a Fulton County polling precinct. Mark, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Park Tavern here in Midtown, specifically where we're at. They have been voting for about an hour and a half. As you can imagine, they'll continue to do this until 7 o'clock. There was a pretty good amount of folks who were waiting when they opened up the doors, about 20, maybe 30 folks. And we've seen a steady stream go in and cast their ballots, but certainly not any kind of long lines, possibly because so many folks ended up casting their ballots during the early voting session. You know, this race is so close. And as we've gotten closer and closer to Election Day, the rhetoric has really ratcheted up on both sides, which brings the question, will we be able to get past this? Will we be able to bring our country together when this election finally is over?
I think either way, the country's going to be okay. We've proven that time and time again as Americans.
On one side, I think we have to fear what's going to happen, and on the other side, I don't.
talking about, but she did cast her ballot. And as far as the folks who are out here, the reason a lot of them tell us that they decided to vote on Election Day was, for some of them, it's a tradition, made them feel more like they were part of the process. Others said that they weren't able to get out during the early voting period, so this was the only time that they could have their voices heard. We're going to have more reaction from voters for you coming up at 9 o'clock, but for now, that's the latest from here in Midtown. I'm Mark Teichner for Good Day Atlanta.
Looks like not a lot of lines there where you are, Mark.
Not too bad. And again, hopefully that'll be the case because we had so many of those folks cast their early ballots that the long lines we usually see on Election Day will allow these folks to go in and out pretty quickly.
Just hoping.
All right, Mark, thank you. Well, in Cobb County, thousands of voters who received absentee ballots late will not get an extension to return them.
Good Day's Brooke Zahner is live at the Cobb County Civic Center following this situation for us. She has more on what the state Supreme Court decision means.
Yeah, this means that several absentee ballots that were requested by Cobb County residents, about 3,400 or so, may not be able to cast that ballot if they cannot get it in by 7 p.m. today. And that ruling came down from the Georgia State Supreme Court. So election officials in Cobb County also responded to this as well. And they say the reason behind this is there was a surge in last minute absentee ballot requests. They say there also was some equipment failures that caused some of these delays here. So the order, though, only addresses a motion for a stay, and that means that a final ruling has not yet been made. But for the time being, Cobb County election officials can only account absentee ballots received by 7 p.m.
And we are interrupting our Fox 5 DC team because we do have this live image coming in out of Cincinnati, Ohio. You can see that is Senator J.D. Vance, of course, Trump's running mate, and he is there with his children. Now, he is going to vote over there in Cincinnati. Not sure if he's going to walk up to members of the media and make a statement. It does look like he's actually walking inside to cast that ballot, may talk afterward. Now, if he does make any sort of comments, we will make sure to bring those to you here on Live Now from Fox. Also do want to pop up this image right here as we are awaiting a briefing coming in from officials over in Georgia. Now, you can see the state flag there, so it does appear this is going to be a state update. It is likely we will hear from Brad Raffensperger as we have in the past several days, but it is a different setting there as we've mostly seen him speaking outside in the hallway there in the Georgia State Capitol. But again, we will bring that to you right when it does get underway. In the meantime, do want to talk a lot more about the election, so let's bring in Matt Grossman, professor of American politics and public policy there at Michigan State University, to discuss all of it. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
And I know you have a busy day, so we definitely appreciate it. Now, we know that a lot of the results are going to come in obviously late tonight, early tomorrow morning. Is it likely that once the polls close, really out west, that we could potentially have a winner for the presidential election, or could we be waiting days and days like we saw last time?
It depends on how close it is. If the polls are off by 3 percentage points or so in either direction, and one candidate is likely to win all of the swing states or most of them, then we should know that by election night. But if it really is as close as these polls suggest, and it comes down to potentially 1 or 2 states, especially if it comes down to those northern states like Pennsylvania that are going to count slower, it'll be a while.
Why does it take quite a bit of time to count all of those ballots? I know that's kind of a general question, but what is the reasoning behind that?
Some of it is state laws that don't allow ballots to be opened before Election Day for pre-processing. Some of it is the state laws that allow ballots to be received either on Election Day or after Election Day, like mail-in votes in the West. And some of it is just that we have this decentralized electoral system where each county is making these independent decisions about how to count and purchasing equipment on how to count, and they're all different, and some of them take a lot longer than others.
All right, a question that we get all the time. Can you explain how the Electoral College works? That, I think, is one of the most pivotal questions here. So can you break that down for me?
The Constitution designed an indirect election for the presidency where states would select electors that then selected the president. That then evolved into a system where almost all states give their electoral votes and electoral voters to the winner of the state popular vote. That means that since it's winner take all of electoral votes in these particular states, that the candidates campaign overwhelmingly in the states that are very close to 50-50. This actually is the smallest tier of swing states that we have had, really only 7, and a very small set of electoral votes that are seem to be under competition by both candidates this time. But it's always the case that the candidates focus on the few states that could put them over the top.
And off to the left-hand side of your screen there, you can see the podium is set up as we expect to hear from Georgia officials here in just a bit, providing an update on the numbers there, any sort of issues that have popped up. And that is, of course, one of those 7 swing states that we're watching very closely there in Georgia. Now, when we look at some of
Georgia.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and Georgia is one of the places that does and has counted pretty fast. So it should be one of our early indications on the night of how things are going.
Yeah, that's good because a lot of people will be watching Georgia again, along with those other swing states here. I did want to ask you a little bit more about the Electoral College overall, because again, we get so many questions about it, and we see those national polls that show the different percentages for Kamala Harris, Donald Trump. Do those account for the Electoral College and how they vote versus, just the popular vote total in general?
We get state and national polls. We can look at that. Obviously, they don't always go in the same direction. In 2000 and in 2016, they went in different directions. But they both have the same set of problems, which is just that really only 1 in 100 people is willing to talk to us about politics, and they may not be representative of those people who are unwilling to talk. Overall, the national polls are usually off by about 3 to 4 percentage points, and the state polls are usually off by 4 to 5 percentage points. So even a typical error in the polls is enough to move this into clearly one camp or the other.
Another question related to the Electoral College. I did want to ask this because this is one that we get quite a bit. Can the Electoral College vote for a different candidate than the state selects? Has that ever happened before? Is it possible? Is it legal?
There were attempts to have state legislatures enact bills that would send different slates of electors. Like in 2000, the Florida legislature considered one. The federal government, through a post-Trump change, has tried to make it harder for states to do that, especially after the election. But of course, we do have some states that send electoral votes on the basis of congressional district winners. So before the election, it's certainly possible for states to change how they would send electoral votes.
And a discussion a little bit about early voting. Is there one party that is more likely to turn out for early voting than another? We've seen millions of people cast their ballots. I believe it's 1/3 of American voters voted early. So is there a party that turns out more than the other, or is it kind of split down the middle?
In 2020, there was a pronounced pattern where Democrats were much more likely to turn out early. They were more worried about the pandemic. The signals coming from their party were much more positive about especially mail-in voting. That has changed to some degree in this election. I still expect nationwide there to be more early votes coming from Democrats, but there are some states like Nevada where it appears that Republicans have gotten much more involved in voting early this time.
What do you think is driving people, again, just based on what you've seen, what do you think is driving people to the polls this time that maybe didn't in 2020?
Well, inflation is a huge issue this election and wasn't in the previous election. There's been a big shift, of course, in immigration policy. In 2020, a lot of the public opinion was actually for being less restrained on immigration because people reacted against Donald Trump's policies. In this election, it's the reverse. People are reacting against Joe Biden's being more tolerant of increased immigration and moving in the other direction. So some new issues have come on to the agenda of voters, and then some voters have switched direction in terms of who they're saying has gone too far.
Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and helping to break it all down. Is there anything else you want to add at all before I let you go here?
Just that people do have to be patient for Election Day itself, because there's a lot of signals that don't tend to go well in terms of predictions. We always have anecdotal reports about turnout that don't turn out to be accurate, and then we have early indications of how things are going from exit polls, which are notoriously error prone, especially in that first wave that are announced as soon as the polls close.
All right, Matt, thank you again for taking the time to be with us. I know it is a busy time, so we definitely appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and I do want to head out to a state that we're watching very closely right here. We do have North Carolina, and this is some of the video as more than half of North Carolina voters have already cast their ballots, but some people in the key battleground state are still recovering from Hurricane Helene, and they'll finally have a chance to vote today. Carolina, where a tent is set up as a polling site. Chelsea, what are voters saying to you so far?
Josh, good morning. You can see this tent behind me. Voters have said that it is a blessing that these tents are here in their community. And although many voters have been able to cast their ballot in the state pretty early, some people still were not able to actually make it to an early voting site, or they've just been far too busy with recovery. And now they're relying on these tents in their community to cast their ballot today. You can see this map that we have here. You can see where Asheville is, and the state's Board of Elections did build 7 large tents in devastated areas. Most of these tents, though, are near those original polling sites. One woman I talked to says the storm knocked out her power, water, and even the bridge to her early voting site. But now this tent polling location is within walking distance, and she says she'll cast her ballot today. She says having a poll nearby is bringing a sense of normalcy for the community, and Helene will actually be front and center when walking into that voting booth.
We're trying to get back to normal, but we still are living in the middle of this. So it's constantly on your mind. And I don't see how you could vote without thinking about everything we've been through in the last month.
And Josh, the polls have been open for nearly 3 hours now, and there's been dozens of people that have already walked into this polling site here in Burnsville. So that just kind of goes to show the how popular it would have been. I think a lot of poll workers that I talked to, they really were unsure what the turnout would be. And I'm telling you, dozens of people have been here this morning. Josh?
All right, Chelsea Torres there with Fox. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And of course, we'll check back in a little bit later to get an update. Thank you again.
Thanks, Josh.
And I do want to pop up this map right here and give you a look, as that is just one of the swing states here that we're watching very closely. That is North Carolina. We're also keeping an eye on Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. We do have Fox affiliates that are in most of those locations, and we'll bring you their coverage throughout the day here on Live Now from Fox. And don't forget, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern time tonight, that is when we will bring you our results coverage. We're going to have our team paying very close attention. The second that those results come out, you will be the first to know if you're watching us here on Live.
Let's go, guys. You guys got in the election. Remember, guys, as believers, you're believers. You want to go for things that is off the word, not our feelings, all those things. So make sure that it's aligned with the word. You know, like things they're pushing on children in school is it's absurd. So just keep those things in mind. Recommend keeping those in mind. Also, based on my understanding, Kamala wants a tax on unrealized gains on property. So if you have a house and it makes money, even though you haven't sold it yet, you still have to pay tax, which is kind of absurd to me. So, you know, just be sure you're voting for the side that more aligned with the word. Let's go. Like, share, subscribe, guys. Let's motivate some more people. Level up together. Remember, let's go.
Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 9:15 on the East Coast and 6:15 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow. Thank you so much for joining us here on this election day as we do continue our live coverage. Moments ago, we did see Senator J.D. Vance, Trump's running mate, go into a polling location to cast his ballot over in Cincinnati, Ohio. He is now walking up to the cameras here, so I do want to pop up the audio.
Hey guys, good morning. Good to see y'all. Appreciate you coming out to see one of the great traditions, of course, in American democracy. I, of course, voted for Donald Trump and myself. So did my wife, and we also, for all the locals out there, we voted for Bernie Moreno for the United States Senate. And if you want the policies of Donald J. Trump in the United States Senate, then Bernie Moreno is the only candidate in this race who I think is the candidate of peace and prosperity for the United States Senate. So I hope people will get President Trump over the finish line. I hope people here in Ohio will get Bernie Moreno over the finish line. Look, I feel good. You never know until you know, but I feel good about this race. I felt good about my own race a couple of years ago when I voted in this exact same spot. Hopefully it goes as well for President Trump and me as it went for me a couple of years ago in the state of Ohio. So appreciate you guys being here. Happy to take a few questions. You obviously can see my kids bouncing around here. There's Usha. And, we'll take a few questions, but we're going to hit the road, go back home, and then head off to Palm Beach.
Senator, regardless of the results tonight, half the country probably won't be satisfied with the results.
Sure.
What's your message to them, potentially your supporters, if it doesn't go the way that they wanted it to?
Well, look, I think our message is, first of all, we do expect to win, but obviously no matter who wins, half the country, as you said, is going to be at least partially disappointed. I think my attitude is the best way to heal the rift in the country is to try to govern the country as well as we can, create as much prosperity as we can for the American people, and remind our fellow Americans that we are all fundamentally on the same team, however we voted. I certainly hope you vote for Donald J. Trump today. I think that his policies are going to promote peace and prosperity for our citizens. But if you vote the wrong way, in my view, I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to treat you as a fellow citizen. And if I am lucky enough to be your vice president, I'm going to fight hard for your dreams and for your family over the next 4 years.
Senator, do you have an opinion on who will fill your Senate seat if you win?
No, look, I'm way too superstitious to think about those things. Let's get this election over the finish line. Let's make Donald J. Trump the president-elect, and then we'll worry about what happens afterwards. No, actually, he called me about 3 in the morning, apparently from the plane headed from Michigan to Palm Beach last night. I was in bed at the time. I haven't been able to talk to him this morning. I was going to call him as soon as I woke up, but when I realized that he got back home around 5:30 last night, I decided hopefully he's asleep, and so I'm not going to call him. I'll certainly talk to him probably on the way to the airport or when we land.
Senator, you grew up 20 miles away, Middletown. Now you're standing here. Maybe in a few hours you'll be the next vice president.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that in that moment? Here to here, and possibly second in command.
Look, it's an amazing thing. My heart is just overwhelmed with gratitude to the generosity of the American people. The fact that I'm standing here is very much a testament to the fact that we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. The fact that I have a beautiful wife and 3 beautiful kids is more importantly a testament to the fact that we live in the greatest country in the world. So I think that what today represents is an opportunity to pay down a debt that I owe to this country. And if I am the vice president, I'm going to work as hard as I can to pay down that debt. I don't think I'll ever be able to return what this country has given to me, but I'm going to try, but we have to win first.
Sir.
My most important message is we ought to argue, disagree about, persuade each other about politics. That's part of the natural process. But we can't discard friends and we can't discard family members. I think that if we all just recognize this basic principle that we ought to love people, we ought to be friends with people, we ought to be family members with people, regardless of their politics, that would do a lot to heal the division. I know myself, I've had a lot of friends, not a lot, I've had a few friends who have cast their friendship aside because I decided that I wanted Donald J. Trump to be the winner in the last election and in this election. I think that's a tragedy, and I'm not going to follow that example. I'd say to everybody, whether you're voting for Donald Trump or voting for Kamala Harris, remember, friends and family, that stuff is what really, really matters. We ought to be kind to one another. We ought to treat each other with respect. And fundamentally, what we're trying to do, President Trump and I, is just build the kind of country where our fellow Americans can achieve their dreams. But that's all of our fellow Americans, regardless of who they vote for. We'll take one more question.
Polling in Iowa with Harris and Henry, considered all that this could potentially lead to over states like Ohio?
No, I'm not too worried about that. Look, one outlier poll doesn't change what we've seen on the ground. We feel very good about the energy. We feel very good about the early vote. But ultimately, the ball is in the courts of the American people. Today is the day. If you don't want an open border, vote for Donald Trump. If you want to get back to low inflation and affordable groceries, vote for Donald Trump. If you want to return the world to peace and stability, vote for Donald Trump. That's my pitch to voters. I really do believe that we can have a golden age of prosperity in the United States of America, but voters are going to ultimately make that choice. I don't worry about any one poll. I think that we're going to win. I really do. But ultimately, the voters make that decision. We'll see what they think about this by the end of the day, hopefully. God bless you guys. Thank you. You ready?
All right, there you have it. Senator J.D. Vance, Trump's running mate, did speak to members of the media after he voted over in Cincinnati, Ohio. Now, we do expect at some point today we'll get an image of Trump voting over in Florida. But as you know, Kamala Harris, vice president there, did actually mail in her ballot already. So we're not going to have any image of her mailing that in. It already did happen. And I believe around 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, that is when we are going to hear from her running mate, Tim Walz, as he does speak alongside his wife, Gwen. So we'll bring that to you in full. Any other campaign events that pop up, we'll make sure to bring those to you live, raw, and unfiltered here on Live Now from Fox. Also do want to pop up this live image that we do have coming in out of Georgia. That is where we expect an update from state officials. You can see the sign there for Brad Raffensperger on the bottom of your screen. He's been providing daily updates as to the situation there with early voting. And of course, today he'll let us know if there were any issues reported so far. But we will bring that to you the second it gets underway right here on Live Now from Fox. Also do want to check in with some of our other affiliates across the country. We do have our team over in Houston. This is over at Fox 26 Houston. So let's pop up the audio and listen in as they are in live coverage.
Republican Marshall Slott is challenging Sheriff Eric Fagan. He is a Democrat. Now, the most controversial issue on some ballots in Fort Bend County, most of Sugar Land included, it is the race between Andy Myers, a Republican, and Terrell Patel. He's a Democrat. He's the challenger. Of course, Patel is, of course, currently under indictment, accused of creating fake online identities to fabricate charges of racism. He's denying those charges. Another big item on the ballot getting attention in Sugar Land is Proposition E, which would issue $12 million in bonds for city facilities, including a brand new animal shelter. It is important to note that Fort Bend County voters can vote at any polling location in the county. Polls are open from 7 to 7. There are about 23 different locations in which you can vote. And of course, if you follow me on social media, I will list those polling locations for you so that when you get out in this weather, you'll be able to go straight to them and get your vote out, especially if you live in Sugar Land, guys, which is where we are. Nate Griffin, Fox 26 Morning News.
Thanks so much, Nate. We appreciate it. All right, right now we're going to give you a live look. This is a live picture from Michigan, which of course is one of the big swing states. And this is Detroit that we're looking at. And we're going to talk about the voter turnout there coming up next.
All right, a big thank you there over to our Fox 26 Houston team. Do want to check in with them as there is a very closely watched race as folks try to see if we will see Ted Cruz reelected to his seat. Again, we will keep an eye on that race as well as many others across the country all throughout the day and in the days that follow. Now, we are asking for your photos here on Election Day with your I voted stickers or maybe hats, whatever you got. So if you do want to submit that here, you can either go to livenowfox.com/connect or just scan the QR code that will appear there on the top right-hand side of your screen. It'll take you over to a website where you can easily submit your photo with a little caption, and we'll be showing these throughout the day as well. You can see this one coming in from Britton Easley, who said, "We voted for VP Harris for a new normal and for all rights. She will be the president for all people." Again, we are getting your images coming in. We have Jay De La Cruz. He submitted this photo and said, #Trump, #Puerto Rican, #voting for Trump. All right, so those are just some of the photos. If you do want to submit yours, just scan over on the top right-hand side of your screen or go to livenowfox.com/connect. As I've been showing you a lot over the past, I would say, 30 minutes or so, we do have the stage set for an update from Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State over in Georgia, to provide an update essentially on the totals for early voting, as well as any issues that they may have seen on today, Election Day, as folks do line up. We've seen several images of different lines across the area. Do want to pop up this image right here. This is out of Bucks County, Pennsylvania. That is, of course, one of 7 swing states that we're keeping an eye on. And the line just kind of gets longer and longer each time we look because the polls have now been open for a couple hours. And we can tell you that all of the swing states, all 7, now officially have their polls open at this hour. 9:26 on the East Coast, 6:26 on the West Coast. Do want to head to a quick break, but we'll be right back with more live coverage here on Live Now from Fox. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 9:28 on the East Coast and 6:28 on the West Coast. You are taking a live look at one of our many cameras showing polling sites both outside and inside. This is a live look over in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. Of course, as we've said, Pennsylvania is one of 7 swing states that we are watching very closely today. And again, our results coverage will begin at 6 p.m. Eastern time. The second that we do get those results, you can see them right here on Live Now from Fox. Now, one thing I want to talk a little bit more about is the youth vote. We've heard a lot about that, not just this election, but over the past several elections. David Schultz is a distinguished university professor of political science and legal studies over at Hamline University, joining us now live. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Josh.
All right. So essentially, when we talked about the 2020 election, a lot of people said that the youth vote could kind of sway the race in one direction or another. Is that a similar situation that we're looking at right now here in 2024?
Yes, we are. Now, just to put a little bit of perspective here, what we're looking at is generally for those, let's say, over the age of 30, voter turnout gets up around 65, 70% turnout. When you go below the age of 30, it drops by about 20 points. So a pretty significant drop off here. And what we're seeing, I think, in the last couple of weeks of the election here is both the Harris and the Trump campaigns targeting those under age 30 voters in the respective swing states, but they're targeting different voters. For Harris, it's primarily female voters under the age of 30. For regardless of race and education, for Trump, he's targeting white Caucasian males without college degrees, again, under the age of 30. So they're both looking at this election coming down to what do these younger voters do?
The youth, are they just there essentially to vote for the presidency, or are we seeing them kind of go to the polls to vote on maybe some of the initiatives that are there when we talk about marijuana, abortion, immigration, other things that are appearing on the ballot?
That seems to be the issues that are driving them more than anything else. And over the last few years, we've seen them driven to the polls exactly by reproductive rights issues, LGBTQ issues, marijuana, exactly as you point here. The difficulty with younger voters is getting their attention in terms of realizing there's an election, the election matters, they need to show up. One of my students had this great observation. She said that getting young people to vote is like telling somebody how to pack for a trip. You've got to prepare, pack, find your luggage, et cetera, et cetera. For especially first-time voters, they don't know how to go about this. They're still learning the process.
Is there, and you kind of touched on this already, but is there one party over another that the youth, so to speak, tend to gear themselves toward?
Well, again, depending on how we look at it here, first off, those under the age of 30 are more likely to consider themselves to be independents, but leaning. And again, women under the age of 30, whether it's white, Caucasian, African American, Latino, more likely to lean Democrat. White male Caucasians without a college degree more likely to lean towards Harris, towards Trump and the Republican Party. So again, so there are clear splits there, clear splits in terms of where they're leaning. But it's also important to understand something else really critical here is that 2020, for example, was an important election. In 2020, the baby boomers were eclipsed by the millennials and Gen Z as the largest voting bloc in America, roughly 37% of the electorate. Now they're about 40%, that is millennials and Gen Z. They really do make a difference, and whether they show up and who shows up really is going to have a huge bearing upon who wins this election.
You touched on this as well, but want to get kind of a breakdown and go a little bit further. We keep saying the youth vote. You hear it constantly. Who specifically are we talking about? I mean, I'm in my late 30s. I don't think I count as a youth in any way.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what we're defining as youth at this point is generally people under the age of 30. And what we're focusing mostly on are what we're going to call two generations. Millennials who were born roughly between about 1982 and 2000. A few of them are a little bit older, than 30. And then it's the Gen Zs, those who were born after 2000. And those two groups together, like I said, are same. They vary by education. So it's figuring out which of those subgroups are more likely to vote for them, and then the task has been to get their attention, find out how you reach them. Is it by cell phones? Is it by social media? And that's really what they've been focusing, and which social media I should say too. So that's what the focus has been for the last 2 to 3 weeks. And the fact that we see both explicit appeals by both Trump and by Harris, using Joe Rogan, trying to use Taylor Swift, are indications about how they're trying to reach these different populations.
My last question for you here, what might prevent the youth from turning out to vote? Why might younger people choose to just not go to the ballot box?
Well, first off, they might not be registered to vote. They might not like the two candidates and might opt to go somewhere else. Believe it or not, there's a lot of young people who just don't see the importance or value of voting in an election. I teach American political science, and I talk till I'm blue in the face sometimes and say voting does matter. And so I think there's a whole bunch of different reasons that are sort of put together in terms of why the youth vote doesn't show up to vote all the time. But this is not just current youth. I mean, take us back a generation, take us back to the baby boomers. Voter turnout for younger people always lags by about 20 points compared to those who are older.
All right. David Schultz, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and help kind of break it all down. Anything else you want to add about this before I let you go?
I guess what I would say at this point is look tonight for the election returns when they start to come in. Are they coming in heavily from college towns or not? And if they are coming in from college towns, that's probably a good sign for Harris. If they're not coming in from college towns, that's probably a good sign for Trump. But I focus on the college towns because that's going to be the base, especially for Harris, that she's looking for.
All right. Kentucky. Again, we have these cameras just about everywhere, especially in key states. Do you want to pop this up once again? We showed you a bit earlier, but the line getting longer and longer over in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. That is one of 7 swing states that are going to be watched very closely as the results do start to come in. Now, I do want to remind you, 6 p.m. Eastern time, that is when our primetime coverage does resume. We'll make sure to bring you all of those results as they do come into our newsroom. We got it all for you right here. Got you covered on Live Now from Fox. Let's head to a quick break now at 9:36 on the East Coast and 6:36 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and you're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 9:39 on the East Coast and 6:39 on the West Coast. Do want to pop up this live image once again. This is coming in out of Georgia. As you can see, the state seal right there and the flag. The podium is set up here for Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who has been giving daily updates on the state of elections in the state. He's been providing early voting numbers as well as word on any technical issues they've had, anything reported. So we expect that same situation today. Now, the podium has been set up for a while, but he has been holding his briefing sometime around 10 a.m. Eastern time. So we can assume it's going to be in that direction as far as the time goes, but we'll make sure to bring it to you as it does get underway. All right. Also, do want to head over and check in with our Fox 5 Atlanta team right now for a look at some of their coverage as we are checking in with our different affiliates.
Have been focused on the presidential race, but there are some very critical elections in Congress that are really going to shape the future.
Important to note
Yes.
that. So we have some help to break it all down for you. Lena DeFlores is here in the newsroom with us for the balance of power in Congress. So take it away, Lena.
All right, we're going to take a look at the House of Representatives. This is the lower chamber of Congress, much bigger than the Senate, which only has 100 seats. But the House of Representatives has 435 seats, and 38 of them represent Texas. Now, they don't represent the entire state of Texas. They represent their own congressional district. And these numbers are based on population. So what you're seeing now is a result of the 2020 census. In fact, that is when Texas gained 2 more seats in the House of Representatives. These are 2-year terms. So if it's in a presidential election, a midterm election, you will be voting for your representatives. And all 435 of these are on the ballot each and every time. Now, they're testing the system, so these numbers are a little off. Let me walk you through it. Of the 435 seats, 218 are needed for control. Right now, Republicans have that. They're walking in with 220 seats versus Democrats with 212 and 3 open seats right now, including 1 here locally. So we'll take a look at the races. There are 38 congressional districts across the state of Texas. 11 of them are right here in Southeast Texas. You have multiple districts. We have District 2, District 7, District 29, for instance. District 18 is the one getting all the headlines because it's the first time in 30 years that Sheila Jackson Lee hasn't been on the ballot. When she passed away in July, she left her seat open for this term, and now you have to fill next term as well. So while under normal circumstances, every American would vote for 1 representative, if you're waking up in Congressional District 18, you are voting for 2. This race will be for the next full term, 2025 through 2027, but you also have to fill the unexpired term that goes from now until January 3rd, where you have her daughter, Erica Lee Carter, and 2 Republicans running as well, Maria Dunn and Kevin Durrell. So this is really going to play into the big picture when it comes to the Electoral College, because now that we have 38 representatives with 40 electoral votes in the Electoral College. So there is a potential, ladies, that we could have both the Senate and the House of Representatives flip-flop control where the other party takes it. If that happens in the same election, it'll be the first time we've seen that in more than 230 years.
Yeah, that could really be huge. Thanks so much for breaking it down, Lena. Fantastic job.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate it. We love having the help of our different Fox affiliates all over the country, many of them in those swing states, the 7 that we are watching very closely. Do want to pop up that map for you once again here on Live Now from Fox. Again, 7 swing states. We're talking Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. Now, we are going to head to a quick break here, but on the other side, we're going to check in with our Fox 10 Phoenix team for a look at one of those swing states, that, of course, being Arizona. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox 945 on the East Coast and 645 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and we are keeping a live look right here over in Georgia as we expect to hear from Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger in a matter of minutes. He will be providing an update on voting there in that swing state, as well as essentially what they've seen so far today and any technical issues that have been reported. He will also likely take questions from reporters who are there at the time. And from one swing state to another, I do want to head now to Arizona. Danielle Miller with our Fox 10 Phoenix team is in Maricopa County, where people will be paying very, very close attention to those results. Thank you so much, Danielle, for being here with us this morning. What are you seeing so far?
Yeah, good morning, Josh. Thanks for having me. So far here in Maricopa County, this is the largest county here in the state of Arizona, very closely watched. We have seen about 20,000 in-person votes. Our polling locations opened at 6 o'clock this morning, so they've been open for about an hour and 45 minutes so far. And we actually had a massive early voting turnout. There's about 2.5 registered voters here in the county, and early voting numbers, there was about 1.5 million. So still about 1.5 million people to go to the polls today. Potentially, there's about 246 polling locations spread throughout the entire county. And here in Maricopa County, you do not have to go to a specific voting center. You can go to any of the voting centers here within the county. So far, we've seen about the longest wait time that's being tracked is about 30 minutes long. There's an average of about a 2-minute wait at these polling locations. And what's pretty interesting here about this election, this is a 2-page ballot. So there is a lot of propositions on the ballot. There's a lot of local races. Obviously, we have the presidential race. So there is a lot to get through in terms of what people will be doing today if they're voting in person, possibly going to take quite a bit longer than in years past. So as far as results here, we are expecting the first drop of any potential results happening at 8 o'clock tonight. So our local time, 7 p.m., that is when our polling locations will be closing this evening. As long as people are in line by 7 p.m., they can still cast their vote there. But yeah, so 8 p.m., we are going to be watching very closely. They're telling us that that is the first drop of some results, most of those coming from the early voting that has happened here within the county of Maricopa. So we're here at the County Elections Department. It is right here behind me. Typically, in years past, we've been able to go inside the Elections Department, kind of watch things happen, the tabulation center. But because it's just become so busy here, it's obviously very heavily watched here in the state of Arizona. We are now outside. They have kind of a media center set up for us. And inside here at the Elections Department, this is all the election officials. It's a war room, if you will. They have a big monitor set up. They are looking at real wait times in terms of all the polling locations spread throughout the entire county. If there is a problem at one of those polling locations, that is allowing them to send somebody out to hopefully fix that problem. So that is exactly what's happening inside here. But this is also the tabulation center inside this building as well. There's a live camera. People can watch this live all throughout the day. So a lot happening here in Maricopa County. As we know, we have a lot of local races that are being very closely watched, and as well as that presidential race being a swing state here. Josh.
All right, Danielle Miller there with our Fox 10 Phoenix team. Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be checking back in with you quite a bit, as Arizona, of course, one of those 7 swing states that we're watching very closely. Thank you again for taking the time to be here with us. We appreciate it.
Yep, you bet.
And I do want to pop this up for you once again, as we are asking you to send in your I voted pictures, whether that's with a sticker or in some cases we've seen a hat, but that's adorable right there. You can see the sticker. This is from Julia Contreras. Hope I said your name right. Took my youngest daughter for her first time voting, raising intelligent humans. We the people want our country back from the greedy. #MAGA. Also have this one right here from Mark and Marilyn Crawford. Every vote counts. They are pointing to their stickers right there on your shirt. And if you do want to submit your own, don't forget, just scan that QR code on the top right-hand side of your screen. Open your camera app, click the little button, and it'll take you to a website you can go to, or you can just go to livenowfox.com/connect. Again, we'll make sure to show all of your election photos right here on Live Now throughout the day. You are taking a live look once again over in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, one of 7 swing states, but that county specifically is one that is really contested. Folks are going to be watching that very closely throughout the day today. Now, we also have some of these other images I do want to show you right here. This is over in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky. You know, people are keeping an eye on just about every state here. No, big race that we're watching there in Kentucky, but still do have to remember that voters are turning out in large numbers just about everywhere. Also have this live image that is coming in from here. This is where we do expect that former President Donald Trump will be voting a bit later on in the morning or early afternoon. Now, we can imagine that as he does that, he will likely speak to members of the media as he exits that voting center right there. But we saw J.D. Vance, his running mate, do that a short time ago over in Cincinnati, Ohio. He casted his ballot and then came outside and spoke to the media, answering just a few questions. It is likely Trump will do the same. Also keeping an eye on this situation right here, we expect to hear from Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. That should be coming down here in just a matter of minutes, so we'll bring that to you live, raw, and unfiltered as it does get underway. Do want to head to our final 2-minute commercial break of the hour now at 9:51 on the East Coast and 6:51 on the West Coast. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 9:53 on the East Coast and 6:53 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and I'm here for the next couple hours to bring you all of your top stories, live events, and breaking news. And no question, it's Election Day. So that is our focus today. Any sort of events that get underway here, press conferences, things of that nature, we will make sure to bring those to you live, raw, and unfiltered. We've been showing you this image over the last hour or so as the stage has been set for Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger there in Georgia to provide an election update. Most of his updates daily here have been around 10 a.m. Eastern time, so it is likely this will begin shortly. Again, we will bring it to you live as soon as it does get underway. We also expect officials in Virginia will hold a briefing around the same time. You can watch that here, but around 11 a.m. Eastern time or so, we should be waiting to hear from officials there in North Carolina, another swing state. Again, we will make sure to keep an eye on all of these and bring them to you live, raw, and unfiltered. Also have this image once again showing Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where folks are lined up and they are going to be there for just a bit. We've seen kind of the same people as we checked back a few times. They're working as fast as they can to get people through. But yeah, as of right now, there is a long wait at many of the polling sites in those swing states. I do want to check in with another swing state, our Fox 5 Atlanta team, for a look at some of their coverage.
Campaign stops last night. Both candidates emphasized the importance of getting out to vote.
We have an opportunity in this election to finally turn the page on a decade of politics that has been driven by fear and division.
With your vote, we're going to win Pennsylvania and we're going to defeat Kamala.
Well, about 78 million ballots have already been cast in the country through early voting. This as in-person voting is currently underway. Now, earlier this morning, we saw voters lined up in Fulton County as soon as the polls opened up at 7 a.m. And just a reminder, polls are open until 7 p.m. You must vote at your designated polling place, and you can find your precinct at My Voter page or by contacting your county's Board of Registrar's office. And we have you covered this election day. Our crew is out across Metro Atlanta with what you need to know before heading to the polls. So we kick things off with Good Day's Mark Teichner, live from a polling place in Fulton County. How's it looking out there, Mark?
Well, the line's actually moving really quickly. Folks being able to go in, cast their ballots pretty quickly and get back on with the rest of their day. As you mentioned, when we were here at the Park Tavern polling precinct in Midtown at the beginning of the day, there was about 20 or 30 folks in line, but it hasn't been really the type of long lines that we've seen in previous elections. Now, possibly that's because we saw so many folks cast their ballots early. We had over 4 million ballots cast early, and that represented well over 50% of the registered voters. Another thing that's been different this year is Georgia is a battleground state. We are one of the 7 that are going to ultimately decide who will sit in the White House. And because of that, we've been inundated with these campaign stops from the candidates, as well as all of these endless stream of campaign ads. So we asked some of the voters, have you enjoyed being the belle of the ball, or you just want this whole thing to come to an end?
I didn't mind the extra attention as long as they get it right.
I wanted it to be over with because I work in Fayetteville, so the traffic has been horrible for the past couple of weeks because of Trump and Kamala coming. It's just been really bad.
So you got some folks saying they've enjoyed it. Some folks are tired of the whole thing. As far as why these people decided to wait to cast their ballots on Election Day, well, we'll talk to that and show you some of their answers to that particular question coming up at 10 o'clock. Reporting live from here in Midtown, I'm Mark Teichner for Good Day Atlanta. Elise, back to you.
I can't wait to hear that because they're in the minority this go around when it comes to voting. So curious to hear their reasoning on that. All right, Mark, we'll see you soon. Thank you. Let's get you caught up on more of the morning's headlines. We'll check in with Good Day's Buck Lanford. Buck?
Elise, in Cobb County, thousands of voters who received their absentee ballots late will not get an extension to return them. The Georgia Supreme Court halted a lower court's ruling. Roughly 3,400 absentee ballot applications were processed late. Leaders blame a spike in requests before the October 25th deadline and technical problems. The ruling means Cobb County may only count absentee ballots received by 7 p.m. tonight. Now, if this affects you, it's best to turn in your ballot in person or vote in person. In Jones County, a poll worker faces prison time for an alleged bomb threat to the election superintendent. Nicholas Wimbush lives in Milledgeville. The Department of Justice says last month Wimbush got into an argument with a voter. Investigators say he then wrote a letter that ended with, quote, P.S. boom toy in early vote place, cigar burning, be safe. Wimbush faces up to 25 years in prison. Well, after rumors of threats and intimidation on Election Day, there's a plan in place across Metro Atlanta to keep everyone safe at the polls. Good Day's Caitlin Pratt is live from the Fox 5 Storm Chaser. You have been all over the city today checking out different locations. So forget Waldo. Where's KP?
Hey, Buck. Good morning to you. South Fulton, and they have a DJ here. We just rolled by.
I know who it is, too.
They're pumping out the jams. You do?
We used to work here. I'll tell you later after the show.
Jams. Oh, my gosh. This is so fun. Okay, so let's switch gears. Talk about a more serious thing here for sure. Across the state, law enforcement, they're making sure things go smoothly as they can as far as security is concerned. And around the polling places here. So law enforcement agencies on high alert for any potential election disturbances. That's what they're phrasing them as. DeKalb County Police Department posted Monday night that it investigated rumors of threatening texts and posts against minorities about Election Day, determined those threats weren't credible. And Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens telling reporters they are collaborating with neighboring agencies, making sure any voter in Atlanta can vote today without any fear, any intimidation, or any violence.
We have the cleanest voter list in the entire country. We have photo ID for all forms of voting. At the end of the day, it's going to be fair and fast and accurate.
So what if you do encounter a problem as you head to the polls today? Go ahead, contact your County Board of Registrar's office or the Georgia Secretary of State. You can also submit a complaint online to the Secretary of State Elections Division. They've made it easy for you to do so. Do just that. New this year, as far as the elections are concerned, poll workers, if a county opted into this service across the state, poll workers can notify law enforcement, the local county, and the state if there's any sort of problem at the polls. That's the latest here. Live this morning in South Fulton, I'm Caitlin Pratt for Good Day Atlanta. Buck, back to you.
I went voting. Big thank you there to our Fox 5 Atlanta team. And we are staying in Atlanta right there as we expect to hear from Brad Raffensperger. I've shown you this image a lot. As the stage, the podium there has been set up for more than an hour, but we expect that he will enter the room here in the coming minutes. You've seen a lot of microphone checks from reporters and photographers that are there in the room. So again, once he enters, we'll make sure to bring that to you right here on Live Now from Fox. Now, over the past several weeks, months, and possibly years here, we've been bringing you all the different polls that have come out ahead of the presidential race. I want to bring in Dr. Andy Smith, director of the University of New Hampshire Survey Center and professor of practice in political science, to help break down everything about those polls. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, first off, I want to talk about the final polls that we have seen come out ahead of the presidential election. Have they shown anything different than what we've seen over the past several weeks? Has anything changed overall?
I'd say no. This has been a remarkably flat election, actually going back till early in September. The polls have shown that both candidates have been within the margin of sampling error across the country in the national polls, and they've been within the margin of sampling error in the battleground states. So I don't think there's been that much. And I think that's typical. We tend to overemphasize the importance of the actual campaign and forget that most of the action, so to speak, has already happened. People's party identification is going to drive how they vote. I use an analogy with my students. If you can imagine an election as a big clay beer stein, little German beer steins. The campaign is the foam on the top, which you're really not that interested in, but it tickles your nose. What you're really interested in is the 90% underneath. And that's been largely unchanged for the last, since 2016 presidential election.
And can you explain how exit polling works? Because we hear a lot about that. How does it actually work? Break it down for us.
So what an exit pollster company will do, and remember, there's really only one exit poll. They're sponsored by multiple media organizations, but it's one organization that actually is conducting this. What they'll do is they'll select random polling places across the state. They will take usually random times of the day as well. And then they will assign a researcher to go to that polling place, stand outside of the polling place, and interview people as they come out after they've voted. And what they'll do is, in order to be kind of a random nature to it, they won't take everybody that comes out or somebody who just wants to talk with them. They'll have what's called a polling interval or a selection interval. They'll select every 10th voter, for example, that might come out of that particular polling place and attempt to complete an interview with them. So it's the thing that's nice about exit polls is that you do know that you have real voters. They've just come out of the polling place. The downside is you still have some of the other problems you have with polls, in that not everybody is willing to participate. So they're helpful, and they get adjusted as the election goes on, as you see the actual counts from those different states come in. So the exit polls are kind of adjusted, but they're most helpful for understanding the reasons why people voted, who voted for which candidates, what issues were most important to voters from the different candidates. So for political scientists, it's really a helpful thing to understand a little bit more about the electorate.
How has polling changed over the past several election cycles? We know in 2016, when you talk about the presidential election there, a lot of the polls were showing that Hillary Clinton was going to win the presidency. As we see, it was Donald Trump. So I'm sure there's different, changes that have been made to make them more accurate.
Well, the polling industry is going through what I would call a paradigm shift, where we're moving from the types of methods that worked 30, 40 years ago and don't really work anymore. In the 1960s and 1970s, the polling industry moved from in-person interviews to telephone interviews, and it took 5 to 10 years to develop the actual research standards and techniques, the best practices to make sure that those are accurate. And they worked for a long time, but we've seen declining response rates. That is the percentage of people who will actually complete a survey when they were contacted. Those response rates are now down to around 5 percentage points in telephone surveys, meaning that about 95% of the people who get contacted don't complete a survey. This results in very, very expensive telephone surveys and, in 2016, inaccurate telephone surveys. At the same time, the web surveys, surveys that are conducted either through text messages or email or somehow over the web, people have been using those more and more, experimenting with those, trying to figure out what the best practices are for those. And that's really developed and bloomed since the 2016 election, where as today, I'd say more than half of all of the surveys that you see conducted are done over the web rather than. But they're not all done the same even. So we're going to see after this election quite a bit of research to understand which one of the methodologies that were used actually perform best and use that knowledge that we get going forward. So I'm very cautious in saying one poll is better than another poll right now, because frankly, we just don't know. We are in the middle of this development of our best practices, and we're not at the end of that yet.
Yeah, and that's why I'm glad we have you on, because there are so many questions about how the polls work and all of that. And you and I discussed this, but one thing that people maybe don't fully comprehend, myself included, would be the margin of error and how that works. Explain that for me.
Well, to start off with, the margin of sampling error, the margin of error, can only be calculated if you start with a random sample. That means you randomly selected the people that you're going to contact, either from like a list of telephone numbers or some sort of a list of email addresses, even, or from a voter list. But you have to start with a random sample. Sampling error recognizes the fact that when we take a sample of the population, it isn't necessarily completely representative of the population. It's theoretically possible to take a random sample of voters in the United States and they all are named Andy Smith and they're all old white guys. It's theoretically possible, not very likely. But what the central limit theorem does for us, which is the mathematical theory that we rely on to let our samples infer the results back to the overall population, is to give us a range of where the sample statistic that we use, in this case, the percentage who favor one candidate or another, the likelihood that is going to happen within a range. So the biggest confusion about sampling error is people think that applies to the gap between the candidates. So say, for example, Kamala Harris might be up 48 to 46 over Donald Trump, or let me give a better one, 50 to 46 over Donald Trump. And the margin of sampling error is plus or minus 3%. And they think that, well, she's got more, her lead is greater than the margin of sampling error. That means she's statistically ahead. No, that's not the case. What you have to do is apply margin of sampling error to both estimates. So Donald Trump at 46 in this example might be up to 49%. He might be as low as 43%. Harris at 50% could be as low as 47% or as high as 53%. So what we're seeing here is that you really have to about double the margin of sampling error. And if you want to understand if the gap between those two candidates is statistically significant. So it's doubling the sampling error is really what you need to do.
Thank you for breaking that down for sure. And you're taking a live look here off to the left-hand side of your screen, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. That is an area that folks are watching very closely in one of those 7 swing states, Pennsylvania, of course. Before I let you go here, I do want to ask you one more question because we did see the results out of Iowa. When we talk about Ann Selzer, people are talking about that poll a lot. Can you break down why it's so significant and what it really means?
Well, it's sort of an outlier poll. Iowa has been going Republican increasingly over the last several election cycles. And Ann Selzer has a long reputation for polling in Iowa. But that said, I think the reason it is so significant is, frankly, because it's an outlier. And this election, again, has been so stable and so flat. Whenever there is an outlier poll, it attracts media attention. It attracts voter attention. Anytime you see shock poll listed, you'll see people flock to that and wonder what's going on. It could be just statistical noise in how that survey was conducted. It could be that in other words, the random sample that was selected is just an unusual random sample. It could be that the methodology that she's using is systematically excluding one person, one group or another. For example, we saw in 2020, one of the major reasons that elections were, the polls were off was that Republicans weren't participating in the surveys. Donald Trump was saying fake news and fake polls, so they didn't participate. That could be a cause here. There's a lot of reasons why it could be a cause, why it could be different. But the biggest reason is people like to click on it because it's unusual. I'll give another example of that. There was a survey here in New Hampshire which showed Kamala Harris up by over 18 points. That's not going to happen in New Hampshire, but it was listed as shock poll, so people will click on it. Frankly, polling is clickbait for the public.
All right. Dr. Andy Smith, thank you so much for helping to break it down. Obviously, a lot of poll numbers, a lot of numbers there, and a lot of information, but we really appreciate it. Anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Well, I would say that we should just remember that the campaigns are constantly looking at polling. The media are looking at polling because it's trying to tell you something that's going on. But in reality, just go out and vote and wait for the election results to be counted. Polling really doesn't impact the overall conclusions we're going to get from the election.
All right. Dr. Andy Smith, director of the University, 90 minutes now, as folks have been ready to hear from Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger over in Georgia. He's been providing daily updates, and normally they're happening around 10 a.m. Eastern time. But this shot coming in from our Fox 5 Atlanta team did go up sometime around 9 a.m. Again, once he does walk up to the podium to provide that update, we will bring that to you right here, live, raw, and unfiltered on Live Now from Fox. We also have this live image right here, as we do expect we are going to be hearing from former President Trump. He is going to be voting at this location in Florida a bit later on in the morning. Now, we saw J.D. Vance, his running mate, vote over in Cincinnati, Ohio about an hour ago. After he voted, he walked up to the cameras and answered some questions. So it is possible, maybe even likely, that we'll hear the same from Trump. Again, if he does speak, we're going to bring those comments to you right here on Live Now from Fox. Do have to head to a quick 2-minute commercial break, the first one of the hour, but a lot more news to get to on this election day. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Here on Live Now from Fox 1016 on the East Coast and 716 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow. Thank you so much for trusting us here on your election day to watch our coverage. Now, we do have different news conferences that are planned throughout the day with various states that are discussing any sort of issues or anything of that nature. And I do want to pop up the audio as it looks like this one with Virginia's Department of Elections is now officially underway. Let's pop up that audio.
Planning and forethought that has gone into today, and we're very confident that we're going to have a safe and secure election in Virginia today.
Julie Carey, could you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
I do not have a question. Thank you.
Regarding the local Richmond issue, can you say what the resolutions were? We were told some of the people actually put their...
Hi, I have a question. Travis Lawler with the Associated Press. The
Hey,
11
Travis
voters.
Lawler, can you hold on a minute? We haven't called on. There's someone that's asking a question in the room. We'll get to you in just a minute.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, what the resolution was for the Richmond issue, were all of those voters being given the correct ballot? And then just regarding those unreturned outstanding mail ballots, I know you said mail-in was your biggest concern. PS, have you gotten a sense about how quickly the mail-in ballots that you've gotten so far, the amount of time it took to go from mailbox to registrar? Are you saying anyone with mail-in ballot to drop it off and then use the mail?
I'm going to take the second question first. It was about mail-in ballots and if we've seen issues with folks returning them. I think a lot of folks have chosen to do a drop-off at a drop box or at a registrar's office. We have seen an increase certainly in that method of return. We have not heard specific examples of people having delays in getting their mail back. Most voters are being very diligent about checking and making sure that their ballot has been received, which they can check online and see that it's been received by the office once they mail it back. We have seen an overall decrease in the number of people who have requested absentee by mail ballots this year as compared to 2020. But you can't necessarily attribute that to just this issue. 2020 was a very different time, and a lot of people requested mail ballots because they just didn't know what to expect on election day that year with the pandemic. So it's hard to, make a causation there. On the Richmond issue, like we said, it did affect 11 voters. They were able to only vote a federal only ballot, but that has since been resolved.
They were given the correct ballot with mayoral, congressional, Senate?
They are not allowed to vote an additional ballot.
Okay. So what's the resolution then?
I'm sorry. We need to go to the president. Travis Lawler, you're up.
Yeah, I guess I was just wondering about the Richmond happened. I mean, why that happened?
My understanding is that the officers of election gave out the incorrect ballot to the voter that had only the presidential race on the ballot.
Again, just to clarify, when you say, what do you mean by resolved then? As in like no more wrong ballots were being given out?
That's correct.
Okay.
13 News Now. Do you have a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. In the wake of the voters who were removed from the polls or from the voter rolls due to the citizenship issue on the DMV forms, when they go get their provisional ballots, if they do same-day registration, what do they need to do to successfully make sure that provisional ballot is counted? Is there any follow-up they need to do?
First, in Virginia, we want every eligible voter to vote in this election. And when an individual fills out a provisional ballot, they fill out a registration form. So they would simply need to fill out the registration form accurately. If they are a citizen, they would indicate that they are a citizen, and that's all that would require.
Speaking of the purge voters, there was a House P&E meeting that you attended back in September. If I remember correctly, you talked about an accuracy percentage on what you believed the system would catch. Were you guys aware of legal citizens getting swept up in the purge as early as September, or when did you guys first realize that legal voters were also getting removed from the rolls?
So let's be clear. We want every eligible voter in Virginia to vote. This is a process that has been in place since It has been managed and processed the exact same way by every administration since 2006 when the law was enacted. Nothing has changed in the way that that process is managed by the department. And it begins when an individual walks into a DMV and self-declares that they are a non-citizen, and there is direct interaction with the individual throughout the entire process. They start the transaction, they are notified multiple times before they are canceled and given the opportunity to affirm their citizenship if they made an error at the DMV.
Jeff Bossert with Radio IQ, do you have a question? Michael O'Connor, do you have a question?
Yeah. Do you know how many people were kicked off the rolls leading up to today? Is there an updated figure? And can you just confirm that this is Susan Beals? The audio was just cut out, so I just want to make sure it's you.
My name is Susan Beals. I'm the Commissioner of Elections for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And in terms of, go ahead.
Yeah, just have an updated figure for how many people were kicked off the rolls.
I think the figure that has been out there is the figure that stands. There has not been any additional work done on that.
Okay, I thought there were daily updates to it.
That process ceased on October 14th.
So no one's been purged from the rolls since October 14th?
The last time that records were sent to registrars was October 14th.
Michelle Hankerson, do you have a question? We can't hear you. Okay, I'm going to go to Megan Polly. Do you have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, we can.
Okay. Okay. Just to follow up, just to clarify, so the October 14th, can you explain, that was the last time, what did you say exactly? And if you're hearing from anyone this morning about, people who've had their registration canceled, if people are reaching out to you.
So again, every eligible voter in Virginia, we want them to vote today. If they have any issue with their registration, they can do that at their polling place through same-day registration. That is available to everyone who is an eligible voter in Virginia. To explain the process of what happens at the DMV, an individual walks into the DMV as part of their transaction. They self-declare that they are a non-citizen, either by checking a box that says, no, I am not a citizen, or by providing legal presence documents that indicate they are not a citizen. That information is sent to the Department of Elections. We compare that list to the registered voter list, and then we send those records to registrars for them to process. The registrar sends a notification to the voter by mail and says, we have information based on a DMV transaction that you made that you've indicated that you are not a citizen. We are giving you 14 days in a form to affirm your citizenship. If they return the form, nothing happens to the voter. If they fail to return the form after 14 days, they are sent an additional notice where they are advised that they are being canceled because of non-citizenship status. Anyone who is canceled for non-citizenship status and feels as though it is in error can go to their polling location today on Election Day and same day register to vote and cast a ballot in this election.
Okay, and if they show up today, oh, sorry, just to clarify, if they showed up today, would they have, what documentation would they need to provide in order to do the same day voter if they felt like there was an error?
They would need to provide the same kind of ID that every voter needs to provide when they come to vote in Virginia. There's a list of acceptable IDs that includes everything from a driver's license to a utility bill.
Luca Powell with the Richmond Times-Dispatch, do you have a question? Okay, going on to Patricia Beckford. Do you have a question? All right, that wraps up everyone on the teams.
And just to clarify regarding
All right, that was a news conference there underway with officials over in Virginia. Now, we are going to be getting updates all throughout the day. We expect in the coming minutes there should be updates that are provided by Pennsylvania officials as well as those in Georgia. So we'll make sure to bring those to you as they happen. Do want to discuss some of the measures on the ballot here. One of them, marijuana. People in 4 states will vote on the future of marijuana legislation. We're talking Florida, Nebraska, North Dakota, and South Dakota. All of them do have marijuana on the ballot. Former President Trump has said that he supports Florida's legalization of marijuana and that if elected, he will work with Congress to, quote, pass common sense laws regarding marijuana. Vice President Harris has said she feels that, quote, we need to legalize it and stop criminalizing that behavior. Also in Massachusetts, medical and recreational marijuana is already legal, but this time around, voters will decide whether to decriminalize the personal use of psychedelic substances. Those are already legal in Oregon and Colorado. The time now 10:27 on the East Coast and 7:27 on the West Coast. You have to head to a quick 2-minute break, but much more coverage to get to in just a matter of minutes. You're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 10:29 on the East Coast and 7:29 on the West Coast. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox as we keep an eye on everything elections. Now, over the past, I would say 2 hours now, we've seen the podium set up for Secretary of State for Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, expected to speak. Now, we are waiting on that news conference, but as you can see, the microphones are set up and ready to go. Once we see him walk up, we'll make sure to bring that to you here on Live Now from Fox. And also, in a matter of minutes, we expect to hear from officials in Pennsylvania as well. We'll bring you that in full once it does get underway. Do want to check in with some of our other crews out there as we have Ted Linder with Fox News following more about first-time voters.
The finish line is almost in sight. And as the race for the White House enters its final stretch,
The only thing I want is get out and vote. Just get out, finish it.
each candidate is using all their remaining time to convince Americans they're worthy of their vote.
Are we ready to do this? We're ready to get out the vote?
This presidential election will mark the first time millions of newly registered voters will be able to cast a ballot. Many are expressing excitement over participating in a democratic process that allows their voices to be heard.
This is my first rally ever. I am a first-time voter, so it was really, really nice. Some tears were shed. I'm really excited to vote.
21-year-old Alondra Cortez went to Vice President Kamala Harris's rally in Allentown, Pennsylvania on Monday. She said the experience was inspirational.
This rally, she just said a lot of things that you really have to take into account as a college student, as a first generation, as a Puerto Rican.
Meanwhile, in Alamo, Texas, another first-time voter story highlights the passion driving people to the polls.
Well, one thing is very important. This country is one of immigrants.
After living in the U.S. for roughly 40 years, 78-year-old Carlos Salas said he was fueled to finally, quote, wake up his civic duties.
This beautiful country has opened doors for me.
Salas, originally from Mexico, recently became a U.S. citizen so he could vote on the matters important to him and his community.
Now, I've exercised my vote. I've exercised my right. If what I voted for happens, that's good. And if it doesn't happen, there's no reason to get angry.
Ted Lindner, Fox News.
All right, Ted, thank you for that report. And don't forget to join us here on Live Now from Fox starting tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. That is our primetime coverage. We'll have all the results as they do come in here on Live Now from Fox. The second we get them, you will be the first to know at home. I know you have a variety of choices for who to watch tonight, but I can promise you the best one, Live Now from Fox. Want to talk more about election complaints? So let's bring in Trey Traynor, Republican Commissioner on the Federal Election Commission, to talk more about that portion of it. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, first off, I want to start by going back to basics. Can you overall explain the role of the Federal Election Commission and what you all do?
Sure. So the Federal Election Commission is made up of 6 commissioners, all appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. And we're responsible for regulating the money that's spent in our elections. So campaign finance regulation is our primary responsibility. We also have some responsibility over the funds, the matching funds that are used in presidential campaigns. And how those monies are doled out throughout the election process.
And I know you can't talk about specific complaints, but speaking kind of generally, what kind of complaints do you guys get?
Well, we get all sorts of complaints. There's only certain ones that we have jurisdiction over, but we get complaints on everything from how elections are conducted to what happens on, the most recent snafu over FCC regulations related to Saturday Night Live appearances. We get complaints like that. The complaints that we have jurisdiction over, however, are those that relate to how money is spent in politics, typically around how advertisements are done and whether or not they're deceptive and whether or not the money was spent properly and whether or not it was reported properly for the public to know how that money is being spent. So we deal with all of those things. We deal with a lot of foreign interference and money and foreign interference in the elections. We've seen complaints related to that in past elections, whether it be from Russia, China, all of the various nations that people complain about playing in our election process. We see complaints of those because they all relate to how money's being spent in the political process.
Do you think people have maybe a misconception of what the FEC is compared to maybe the FCC or other organizations?
Oh, absolutely. I think they have a misconception of that. I mean, the name in and of itself, the Federal Election Commission, would lead you to believe that we deal specifically with how elections are conducted. And what we need to remember is that in our republic, elections are conducted by the states. The Constitution gives the specific authority of how to run the elections to the states. So there's very little federal regulation that goes into the process. In fact, most of what comes down from the federal government for the conduct of elections is really guidance to states and best practices to the states with regard to how to conduct their elections. So most of the complaints that people will have about the process today in the election on election day would be one of complaining to whether it be secretaries of state or attorneys general for the 50 states in order to get those type of complaints answered.
As far as the number of complaints, again, I know you can't go into specifics about a lot of the specific complaints, but how has, I guess, this election cycle compared to previous election cycles. Can you kind of delve into that?
Sure. So there's been an uptick in the number of complaints that we've seen this cycle compared to last. Now, obviously, it's a presidential cycle, so people pay more attention to what's going on. And we do, in presidential election cycles, see more activity at the Federal Election Commission than we would do in, say, in the off-year midterm elections. But we've seen an uptick. What we've seen a lot happening in politics these days is that the presidential campaigns in particular, but even the congressional and Senate campaigns, are being fueled primarily through low dollar donors. So those would be donors who donate $200 or less to the process. And the regulations don't have the same rigorous requirements for reporting those type of donations as they do for those that donate over $200. And so we see a lot of complaints that come in about people say that they're not seeing as much disclosure in the money that's coming into the process. And so, and a lot of that is being fueled by the fact that there are low dollar donors. You know, we hear a lot about dark money and big money donors being the problem with the process. And I actually see the opposite happening. I see low dollar donors as driving the process more than anything else. Candidates have become very good at asking for that $10, $15, $20 donation, and people have been very receptive to that. I know most people are probably tired of it by now, but they're getting text messages and emails like crazy asking for those donations. And it's been a very effective fundraising strategy. And not that money in politics is a problem, because it's not. It's just that that's where we see the money coming from mostly as low dollar donors.
My last question for you, when should people go about lodging a complaint with the commission? And more importantly, how do people go about doing that?
Well, they should lodge a complaint with the commission when they genuinely see a problem in the process with how money is being spent in campaigns, and they should do that with actual knowledge of what's happening. One of the things that I get frustrated with the most in my job is just complaints that are filed based upon mere innuendo or hearsay, and people don't actually have knowledge of what they're filing a complaint. It makes it very hard for us to do our job, because we do have to open an investigation, and we spend time and taxpayer resources to go investigate something, and ultimately there not be anything there. So if they actually see something or know that money is being improperly spent, file a complaint. It's very easy to do. You can go to fec.gov, fec.gov. There's a complaint process outlined on there. There's forms that people can fill out. And they do have to swear to the information that they're submitting to us, saying that they believe it to be true.
All right. Trey Traynor, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and break it all down. Anything else you want to add before I let you go?
No, Josh, it's just so important for people to participate in the political process. I'm glad to be a small part of that in dealing with the money that's spent in politics and people exercising their First Amendment rights. And thank you for taking the time to highlight it today.
Of course. Thank you again. And I know it's going to be busy, so we appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Josh.
And I do want to pop up this image that we do have as we saw Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, walking in and addressing the media on elections. Let's pop up the audio.
And I'm just really grateful for the team that we have. I've led the way to make Georgia the most secure, free, and fair place to vote in the United States. And we've done that by doing a citizen audit, make sure only American citizens are on the voter rolls. We've done 2 audits on that. Now we have photo ID for all forms of voting. We have photo ID for absentee voting. And I believe that has helped shore up security and also confidence. And then we have a multi-state organization that makes sure we have clean voter lists, so our lists are up to date and accurate. So far, we're tracking line times. Average line time in Georgia right now is 2 minutes. And then with the electronic poll pads, average check-in is 49 seconds. When I checked in, it was actually, under 49 seconds. It was actually about 47 on early voting. And I did want to share that because you probably thought I got special treatment. But today, it's 49 seconds for everyone in Georgia. And so people are having a great voting experience. So turnout looks like right now it's just solid, steady, and it's more than you would think because the lines are moving so quickly. So people are in and out in less than 10 minutes. So it's just a tremendous day. So that's where we are right now. And didn't know if anyone had any questions right now they'd like to ask. Yes, sir.
I Secretary of State, when do you think Georgia will be able to call a win in the presidential race?
Well, we will have, with SB 189, all of this early voting, so that's over 4 million ballots that were cast early and the absentees that were accepted. All of that has to be uploaded and reported no later than 1 hour after the polls close. Most polls will be closing at 7 p.m., so by 8 p.m. you'll have probably 99% of all that. So that'll be uploaded. So you get a good idea of what the race looks like. Then all the voting that you're seeing today, before the end of the night, you'll have all of that. Many of the smaller counties are pushing to be done by 10:30 at the latest. But that's the type of response you're going to see in the smaller counties. But by the end of the night, you'll have all of those results.
One follow-up question. Regardless of the outcome, do you expect legal challenges?
Well, that gets into future predictions. And our job is make sure we have a secure election that's accurate. And we're really excited that's also going to be fast. The voters are having a great experience. Lady in the back.
Sorry to interrupt. We've received a lot of emails today about people who say their polling location was changed last minute. Signs outside of polling locations say it's actually this other location. Are there any reports of that? Do you know of any last minute changes? What should people do if they encounter this?
I haven't heard any reports about last minute poll changes.
Did all the polls open on time at 7? Any delays today?
As far as we know right now, it's been smooth. And so we obviously hear about that a little bit later. Or a 30-minute extension. When you have 2,400, there's always something that could happen right at 7 a.m. I know I was up at 5, but many of the people that are working here, when I checked with them, they were actually up at 4. So I guess they stepped in.
Still on pace for 1 million, you think, today?
Oh, I think we'll pass that based on where we are right now, just the feedback we're getting. I think it'll be a little bit north of that. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
You can't predict the future, but have you prepared for litigation if you need to go to court? And specifically, what kind of things have you done?
We're battle tested, and we'll have a process in place. We'll make sure we follow the law, follow the Constitution, and report the results accurately.
One last question. Several thousand Cobb County voters got their ballots late. They were under the impression, many of them, as of yesterday, that they would be able to return those ballots late. With the day now, any of them, or to the people who are in charge of submitting those ballots or mailing those ballots?
The Georgia Supreme Court had a ruling, and every voter needs to return those no later than 7 p.m. If they can't get to the election office for Cobb County, then they can show up at their precinct, and they can then, nullify their absentee ballot, and then they can vote in person. So there's a process in place.
Have you heard of any threats at polling places that we've heard about? One bomb threat. Have you heard any other verifiable threats at any polling places?
We've heard some threats that were of Russian origin.